Well, hello, and welcome on in to another episode of Oh So Curious Times DCU Daily. And on today's show, we have got so much to talk about as always, but today's show is particularly packed because yesterday, John and I decided to take a day off without doing a live show, and apparently those are the days when all the big news breaks. So we gotta talk about James Bond. We have a lot more insight now into how the deal with MGM went down. Amazon MGM buying the creative control to the franchise. Even though the Broccoli's are still part owners, they no longer have creative control. So Amazon gets to call the shots. Of course, you've probably seen the news about it all over the internet. We have some more insight into what went into making that deal happen. How much money did it take Amazon and Jeff Bezos to buy out the creative control from the Broccoli's? We'll talk about that. We're going to talk about Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, episodes 9 and 10. It's the season finale. I shouldn't say the series, because there are two more seasons coming up. So it's not the series finale, it's the season finale. Unless you're British, in which case it's the first series finale. We're going to get into that. John and Liz were both checking that out. We do have Liz and John on today. So Steven, if you're here, let's rest assured, Liz is on the show today. And of course, we have DCU Daily. We've got to talk about Brendan Sklenar talking again about being Batman. Clayface, the movie, has a director now. We're going to get into that. And of course, we have to review The Monkey and look ahead to Last Breath of the movie coming out in today. So we're going to look ahead to that and so much more. We got MCU Weekly, DCU Daily, Movie of the Week. Oh my God, it's a packed show. Let's get things started. Well, that intro is as timely as ever, but I can say that I've had that intro on the show for like 5 years. So, you know what? I guess I saw this coming a long time ago. Hello, Liz and John on the show. Liz, it's been a while. Loving the Eras Tour hoodie. How are you doing today?
Great. Hey, gang. Yes, I've been wanting to debut this forever on the show. It's finally ready. I'm afraid to leave the house with it because it's cream. Thanks for that, Taylor. But it's so comfortable, y'all. Anyway, hi, everybody. It's so good to see you. I missed y'all. Missed you.
Somebody called G.I. Robot. I like the sign.
Freaking, we need him now more than ever, gang. Now more than ever.
Just send him to the White House. Anyway, John, how are you doing today?
Let's not get into that.
Just let him
I have a themed cream shirt. I have one of my letterbox shirts. My other one is like filled with holes now, but it's Be Kind Rewind. Remember VHS tapes, guys? I do, because I'm apparently old now. Well, Gen Z would call me old, even though I am technically Gen Z.
Don't worry, John. I'm still older than you, babe.
So I still remember tapes. I still have tapes in my fucking basement. But yeah, good times.
You know what I didn't mention in the preview to the show is one of the topics today is world peace. Because yesterday, not only did James Bond get bought out by Amazon, at least the creative control of James Bond, the franchise, but world peace happened in the comic book world, especially in the world of DC Comics. So we will get it. I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about, but we will get into it as the show goes on. Yeah. Yes, there was like this big handshake, like in RRR. Like it was fire and water coming together, and then like world peace happened, and then the logo came. Anyway, we're going to get into that and so much more. But as we always do, we start the show off with the news. So let's dive into that, which is where we will talk about James Bond. And then, we'll take it from there.
It doesn't seem to matter what I do. I'm always the number two.
All right, mister, I need to paint my abs on to get nominated. You don't see Robert Downey doing that.
You're kidding. You're kidding. I can't open the envelope without this.
Warner Brothers is heading back into the Matrix with a new movie in the works.
Wonder what other surprises are in store.
I want to be Bruce Wayne.
I like that. You're gonna love me.
There's the shot right there. That.
Okay, we don't need to see
right there.
You look ridiculous.
Well, not no more, he don't.
What, dude? I can barely understand you. Your accent's insane.
What
Give me a hand up. Nope, I'm actually okay. Thank you very much.
Oh, wow. Wow.
before we go any further into the news, just want to welcome Caleb in the chat. Holla holla, or honka honka. Did I just say holla holla? How dumb of me to say that. But anyway, g'day, mate. Well, let's start things off with the news as we always do. So the first piece of news that we gotta get into. This is something that dropped yesterday, but I wanted to talk about it because it just looks incredibly fascinating. Just absolutely interesting. One of many ways you can talk about the story. So I'll read the headline. I'll read a little bit about like the story, and then I'll get you guys' opinions on it. So. Aloha to Hawaii, essentially, because there's going to be Martin Scorsese going to the islands to make a Goodfellas meets The Departed sort of a movie, and he's bringing not only Leonardo DiCaprio along, because he always brings him along, those guys are best friends, but he's also bringing Dwayne Johnson along and Emily Blunt in what looks like, and just exactly the kind of movie that could potentially, for the first time in a long time, make Martin Scorsese a good amount of money at the box office. So as it says here in Deadline, it was an exclusive. The hot package in town is a pitch for a Martin Scorsese directed untitled drama that would star Dwayne Johnson, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Emily Blunt, and of course also The Rock, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. So if you look at the details again, it's so far we don't have like more than just a brief description, not even really a log line. But when you think about it, Scorsese making a movie that's The Departed times Goodfellas with, I think Dwayne is going to be playing like a mob boss, which is, and because it's in Hawaii, I imagine like he's playing like a Hawaiian mob boss, and it somehow turns into, like a fight for power within the criminal underworld of the Hawaiian Islands. So it sounds interesting to me. It sounds fascinating, quite frankly. I would have never picked Dwayne Johnson to be in a Scorsese movie. I mean, what are your thoughts on this, guys? Liz, I'll start with you. What did you think about just the story in general?
So I've heard different stories about people working with Dwayne. Some people have said that he's extremely professional and wonderful and they love working with him. And then others have said that he shows up late and they've had a hard time shooting. So I'm really interested to find out if he and Leo end up getting along. I think the answer to that will come when they start promoting this film, whether or not we see the two of them together talking about the film, or if they'll be promoting it separately. And also, or like, one of them with Emily or whoever else. So that's like the most fascinating part of this for me right now is like, will Martin do the classic thing and invite him back into future films? Or is this the only Martin Scorsese film that Dwayne is going to have the chance to do based on his own professionalism? So that's like the only thing I care about right now. I just care about the tea. But because I'll see the film regardless. It sounds interesting. It sounds like it'll be, probably 5 hours long if Scorsese has his way. So we'll see what happens, but good luck to him.
Yeah. I think it's, as I pretty much is just going to copy what you say, but like, yeah, I've heard so many conflicting things about The Rock. It seems like he actually now wants to take his career seriously, because he's going to be in The Smashing Machine this year, which looks really good. And he's like, then now he's going to be in a Martin Scorsese movie. So like, that's like more serious. So like, maybe we can actually see him if like actually maybe being a good actor if he is one. So, we'll see. I mean, as I always say, David Fincher is so talented, he made Tyler Perry seem talented. Like, maybe Martin Scorsese and the Safdies have the same thing with The Rock, of like, Martin Scorsese is such a fucking goat that he makes The Rock seem like a talented actor. So we'll obviously see. Worst comes to worst, Emily Blunt and Leo can pick up the slack.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how much Martin's willing to put up with. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's going to be an interesting movie, whichever direction they go in terms of the story. I'm still just surprised that Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is doing a Martin Scorsese film. It's interesting, to say the least, but I mean, better late than never. But I mean, look, one thing you can't ever say about Dwayne is that he's always taken his movie career pretty seriously. So he's somebody who wants to be, considered a proper actor, despite the
I mean,
fact that he's
when
always
he's on
promoting a
the
million products.
yeah, when he's on the promotion circuit, he's great. He's a great
Yeah.
interview. He's very entertaining.
Yeah.
But again, like I said, the telltale sign will be whether or not he and Leo end up on Graham Norton's couch together at the same time, and it'll also be whether or not Martin puts him in another project later on down the line. So that's how we'll know for sure.
Yeah, yeah, and you know what? We'll see what this movie turns into. I mean, right now it's still a pitch. It's a package, right? You got a director, you've got your stars. I mean, look, not only is Dwayne Johnson in there, and obviously Leo is in there as well, but Emily Blunt, one of the best actresses working in Hollywood today, and she's on a winning streak, quite frankly. Like, between Oppenheimer and the movie, I think there's a Jungle Cruise sequel that she's got coming up. There's an Edge of Tomorrow sequel potentially. So she's already a part of big franchises. Yes, she had that, miss with, what was the name of the stunt movie that she did with Ryan Gosling last year?
First of all, I don't know how you can call that a miss. That was quite enjoyable.
No, I'm saying box office wise it was a miss, but Fall Guy was a great movie. It just didn't make any money. Like, it made such little money that they put it on streaming like 3 weeks after it came out, which was ridiculous.
That is fair.
But still, I love Emily Blunt. I love Dwayne Johnson, Leonardo DiCaprio. Goodfellas and The Departed are two of my favorite Martin Scorsese movies, right up there with like Shutter Island. So I'm like, if you want to come give me a cross between those two, I'm all for it. Now, of course, now we got to move on to our next big story, guys. So yesterday, the world of Hollywood was both shaken and stirred because James Bond has exchanged hands, and yet he hasn't. But the way in which James Bond has now exchanged hands as an IP is significant. So I'm sure if you guys, unless you guys live under a rock, you've already heard the news that the shocker of the day yesterday, and even today, because we're getting a lot of follow-up details on this. Amazon MGM, of course, a part of the Jeff Bezos-led Amazon MGM Studios now has taken over creative control for the James Bond franchise. And this happens at a time when, the aging Broccoli siblings who took over the franchise from their late father, Michael G. Wilson and Barbara Broccoli, they're half siblings, right?
Yep.
John? So same mother, different fathers, but essentially they've been shepherding this franchise for decades now, right? Like, hasn't it been like at least 40 some odd years that the Broccoli siblings
it's been since the beginning. Yeah. Albert Broccoli has been there since Dr. No.
Yeah.
Barbara Broccoli, I think, was there since the Brosnan era. Wilson and Broccoli have been there. I think it was either World Is Not Enough or Die Another Day, where they officially joined as producers. Michael Wilson has been a part of the franchise a lot longer. I think he back in the Moore era is when he joined in. I think Barbara Broccoli officially joined in. I think it was Die Another Day, if I remember that correctly. I could be misremembering.
Yeah, but essentially the point being, the Broccoli's have been a part of the James Bond franchise. They're the ones who brought James Bond to the big screen, and the Broccoli siblings have been doing this for basically their entire lives. It seems like, right? They're up there now in age, and basically hoping to just maybe move on to other projects. At least that's what we know now, because up until, let's just kind of put this in context, up until yesterday, the latest we had heard from this James Bond situation was that the Broccoli's and Amazon MGM could not agree on what to do with the next James Bond. Amazon seemed to be interested in maybe, according to reports, maybe doing a whole cinematic universe around James Bond, which is and then potentially change up maybe what what the character is in some ways that maybe the Broccoli's didn't agree with seemingly, and the Broccoli's were like, Amazon has no idea what they're doing, and it just seemed like they were negotiating in the public eye. At least that's, in hindsight, what seemed to be happening, because at the time we were like, well, unless they figure their shit out, we don't know when we're gonna get a next James Bond movie. But now, as of yesterday, the deal is done. And according to this report, just to kind of review, and then we'll get into some follow-up details, Michael G. Wilson and Barbara Broccoli are going to continue to be part owners. I mean, I guess they're still like, you know, controlling owners in a manner of speaking of the franchise, right? But they're putting together a new joint venture with Amazon, which will allow Amazon MGM to take over creative control of the franchise. So while the Broccoli's will still financially profit from the movies, I'm sure, and anything else that the franchise does, they will no longer be the ones calling the shots. Like like if you guys remember when Daniel Craig was cast in the role, they did a press conference, the Broccoli's were there, right? I think now you're gonna see a situation where if something like that were to happen, like, you know, you get the next Bond casting, the Broccoli's would be more in the background. They won't be the, you know, front and center, you know, trotting the next Daniel Craig onto the red carpet. So alongside that, of course, all the creative decision making now moves into Amazon's MGM Studios. So whoever they decide to put in charge, maybe, you know, like a Kevin Feige of the James Bond franchise. Of course, when Amazon bought MGM a number of years ago, it's been a few years now, James Bond was the crown jewel. But the only problem was they couldn't really do too much with it unless they got the Broccoli's approval. Now that hurdle's out the way. And today, what we found out is some of the details about what essentially, you know, it cost Amazon. So before we get into the conversation, I just want to point this out because I think this is important context, that Amazon MGM Studios shelled out an extra $1 billion plus, meaning more than $1 billion to take control of James Bond. So, you know, it took a pretty hefty check to essentially buy out, you know, the Broccoli siblings.
Not as much as the check Disney gave George Lucas for Star Wars. Still not as much. Just saying.
But I feel like that's an acceptable number. I mean,
I think that's cheap.
Hopefully fans are appeased by that.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a lot of freaking money.
It's a lot of money, but think about this. The No Time to Die made like $750+ million. I think it was like 775, something like that, right? Somebody let us know in the live chat what the exact number was. But the last James Bond movie almost made $800 million. So Amazon must be thinking, I mean, and obviously I think what is Skyfall made $1 billion?
774.2.
There we go. Pretty much in that range. And then Skyfall was $1 billion James Bond movie. I think it's still the highest grossing. I don't know we have ever had a single $1 billion grossing James Bond movie since or before, obviously. So it's a multi-billion dollar franchise. 25 movies in. Obviously, we have had like a good, was it 6 actors take on the role? Is it 5 or 6? I'm like, so there's
Connery, Lazenby, Moore, Dalton, Brosnan, Daniel Craig. Six canonically. 6 canonically. If we're not counting Casino Royale and like voices and shit like that. Just
So with that in mind, I think for Amazon to do this, it's significant because obviously it's a good chunk of change. The Broccoli's. For Amazon, $1 billion probably doesn't mean a ton because remember, they spent like basically that amount of money on just acquiring the rights to the Lord of the Rings, just a part of the Lord of the Rings for the Rings of Power. They spent like 400 some odd million, and then they spent another 300 million on just the first season. So Amazon's got money to burn, hence the thumbnail for this show. But and you know, Jeff Bezos has got money to burn. He's been asking on social media,
money to
like,
burn.
people...
He's got money to burn, flood, shit on, wipe his ass with. Like, yeah,
he probably does.
He probably does.
He probably does.
But one thing I wanted to, before we get into the conversation about where Amazon's going to take the franchise,
to the grave. To the grave. We already know it's to the grave.
It's gonna
James
be
Bond
real bad.
is dead. 1962 to 2025.
It's gonna be real bad.
This is done. It's
Jeff Bezos probably.
It's done.
Jeff Bezos probably cut that check so they would cast him as the next Bond because he thinks so fucking highly of himself.
Even though he's more like Blofeld.
He's more like the villain of the movie. But basically, you know, we had statements from all the interested parties, right? So, of course, Amazon for Amazon MGM, the head of Prime Video and Amazon MGM Studios says, you know, since the theatrical introduction for over 60 years, James Bond has been one of the most iconic characters in film entertainment. We are grateful to the late Albert R. Broccoli and Harry Saltzman for bringing James Bond to movie theaters around the world, and to Michael G. Wilson and Barbara Broccoli for their unyielding dedication and their role in continuing the legacy of the franchise that is cherished by legions of fans worldwide. Then Barbara Broccoli said, look, my life has been dedicated to maintaining and building upon the extraordinary legacy that was handed to Michael and me by our father, producer Cubby Broccoli, and I've had the honor of working closely with 4 of the tremendously talented actors who have played 007 and thousands of wonderful artists within the industry. With the conclusion of No Time to Die and Michael retiring from the films, her brother, I feel it is time to focus on my other projects. And then
What other
Michael G.
projects
Wilson.
do you possibly have?
Well,
listen,
but like, okay, but
Michael's in his 80s. Barbara's in her
Michael
60s,
makes sense.
Like,
yeah,
but Barbara's in her 60s. Like, people are allowed to like retire. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
retirement, but like, I'm just curious, what other projects does she have? Like, what are you talking about there?
I mean,
retirement makes sense.
But also, Michael G. Wilson, this is what he said. With my 007 career spanning nearly 60 incredible years, I'm stepping back from producing the James Bond films to focus on art and charitable projects. Therefore, Barbara and I agree it is time for our trusted partner, Amazon MGM Studios, to lead James Bond into the future. So, of course, it looks like
literally just
they're
sold
retiring.
James Bond to Dr. Evil. Like, they literally like so next it's going to be Elon Musk is going to buy Superman next year. Like, this is where, I mean, let's be real here. It's gonna suck. It's gonna suck.
100%.
It's gonna be real bad.
So this is where let's now figure out like where things go from here, right? Because it came as a shock.
I mean, listen, I will say Amazon has put a ton of productions out. A lot of projects have been out, films, TV shows. I do enjoy their product for the most part, but I can't help but feel like when you buy into a well-known, well-established, beloved franchise like this, you're doing it because you want to insert your own bullshit into it. There's no way that they're doing this and they're not going to try and put their own bullshit spin on it. That's just where I'm coming from.
So as it says on the screen here, Barbara Broccoli's close-knit James Bond circle, like the people that she's probably most trusting with any James Bond, information and news, they were in shock from this news, like as if there had been a death in the family. They're sad. I mean, they're saddened by the idea that they will no longer be.
The fans are sad.
Yeah.
But I will just for the maybe playing devil's advocate or maybe just making an argument in favor of Amazon for a moment. I want to point this out. Amazon has brought us a lot of stuff that we do like. I mean, you have Reacher.
Yes.
You have you have Alex Cross that's running right now. I think what's the is it Borderlands or Fallout? Fallout.
Yeah.
Borderlands wasn't terrible. Fallout, which Emmy nominated, like great TV show, another season coming. They're working on a God of War TV show that's gonna have like one of the best writing rooms of all time. Why am I forgetting his name? For All Mankind, Battlestar Galactica. Ronald D. Moore. Not just Ronald D. Moore, Ronald D. Moore. Like, he's this. Okay, it just kind of is in his name. Ronald D. Moore is going to. So, like, Amazon is obviously invested at a high level. And even Rings of Power has gotten better with season 2.
Gross fiance as a Bond girl. Like, he's gonna do something gross.
It's gonna be like John. Like, how many fucking shitty Amazon comedies have we gotten with John Cena? Probably gonna cast like John Cena as the new Bond. Like,
or the Bond villain or something. Yeah.
And they're gonna insert like a bunch of shitty Marvel jokes. Like, take a look at this Goldfinger.
First of all, we don't need to bring Marvel into this, John. But I'm just a little bummed. Again, we'll see what happens. Of course, we're gonna watch it, but I can't not.
I don't know if I can. I can't. You know what? I'm glad we got at least like 70 years of history with this character. Obviously, we've gotten shit in the past. I mean, like Diamonds Are Forever, Moonraker, Die Another Day. They all exist. But like, at least we've gotten like fucking like top tier Bond content. Now it's just like, well, we have, I guess, the comics and the books now. So I guess
but it also Bond concerns me too, because now it makes me wonder: are they going to try and gatekeep? Are they not? I mean, obviously they'll make more money if they do a theatrical release, but are they going to gatekeep and be like, oh, we're exclusively like? Is this their way of getting more people to their streaming service by doing this? That's a question. And also, are they going to try and do some bullshit spin-offs? Because
that's what they plan to do. They want because they already claimed that Barbara Broccoli said that they have no idea what they're doing. So when they say trusted, that's bullshit. And on top of the fact, they have said many times that they want to turn James Bond into a cinematic universe. So like we're gonna get like spin-offs of like 005. And see, there he is.
I mean, but like, is that such a bad thing that they want to do spin-offs? I'm like, I feel like there's potential as long as you don't do
like one of the
badly.
only like pure franchises that are left.
That's
bro.
true.
Like,
I am a bit of a
everybody
James.
is doing too much right now. Fucking stop already.
Mission Impossible is one of the few that's just like it just got sequels.
Right?
Like,
yeah.
Now, I mean, Harry Potter for a while, and then they did the fucking Fantastic Beast franchise, and now they're doing all that.
And now
shit.
they're doing this. Yeah.
It's tiring. It's like, how many? Okay, cool. You have the one cinematic universe that is still like, for the most part, together.
Yeah.
And fine.
Reliable.
Like Marvel, and even Marvel, the fucking foundation is crumbling. Like for every Marvel, which is the one, and maybe the MonsterVerse,
bringing Marvel into this.
You have the Sonyverse, the Dark Universe, both versions. You have like the fucking Mark Millar universe that fucking failed. You have like, I think now the new like there's so many fucking like attempts at a cinematic universe that it just now it's like Mattel is doing a cinematic universe because Barbie was successful. It's like, what are we fucking like? They tried to do a thing with Transformers, doing a Barbie universe, and now Transformers is failing because the last one made no money, so now they're not going to do the fucking G.I. Joe spinoff they want to do. So it's like,
I mean, well, like, Hasbro Elite Easy saying Hasbro has a universe, the Toyota, Masters of the. Anyway,
yeah, Transformers, yeah.
That's all of that stuff. But let's kind of keep going here for a second because I do want to dive into a few other pieces of news. So again, today a lot of reactions and follow up to the shocking news. Timothy Dalton, of course, one of the former Bonds. He did 2 Bond movies back. Was it the 80s? Right.
My favorite Bond. Love you, Tim.
Timothy Dalton, I think, is one of the most underrated James Bonds of all time.
I mean,
he was shocked that Barbara Broccoli was relinquishing control of the franchise. I mean, he didn't see it coming either. He said, I was very, very surprised and shocked. Barbara is, I think, a fabulous woman and a wonderful producer, as was her father, Cubby Broccoli, who I got on with very well and liked a lot. He was a very powerful and strong anchor for the project. Nothing went on that he didn't want, and it's sad that he's not with us anymore. That's all I can say. He was well in charge of the show, and that's not so anymore. So,
I mean, shade, Timmy. I love you. This is why we love Timothy Dalton, ladies and gents.
The dude speaks his mind.
I mean, like, what does he have to lose? I mean, it's like he was in. I mean, he probably has the best. It's ironic how him and George Lazenby have the least amount to his name, yet they're the ones with the best track record. Because George Lazenby got 1 great movie, and then Timothy Dalton got 2 great movies. Pierce Brosnan only has 1 good movie to his name, and then I think half the Daniel Craig movies suck, and then half the Roger Moore movies blow, and then half the Sean Connery ones blow. So technically, they have the best. And I have heard from like hardcore Bond fans that Timothy Dalton is the most accurate Bond, like book to Bond translation.
Book to Bond translation, exactly.
Book Bond to movie Bond translation. So that's pretty great. No, this is not a new shirt. I don't think I've ever worn it on the show before, but I have it. Like, it's not the most comfortable shirt ever, but it was the one that was clean. So
it's a vibe, John. It's a vibe.
I feel like I've seen you wear that shirt before.
I mean, probably, but no, I've had this for a while.
You haven't. It's not very common. It's not one of your go-tos, but
no.
But okay, so the reactions continued today. So I just want to get into, of course, the last man to play James Bond, who's on the thumbnail for today's show, Daniel Craig. Also, Daniel Craig, who's gonna be in the new Knives Out sequel. What is it called? Something Dead Men? No, that was before. There's a new Knives Out movie coming out this year. I keep forgetting the name of it, but
Wake Up Dead Man.
Wake Up Dead Man. I was like, something about Dead Man in there. Wake Up Dead Man. And of course, he recently passed on Sergeant Rock, which we talked about for the last 2 days straight. But he was a great Bond. In my opinion, he was the best James Bond. I think the best James Bond movie ever made was Casino Royale. Skyfall was a great movie. I mean, all 5 of his movies had an uneven track record, but nonetheless, I think, Casino Royale was great. He was the first blonde Bond.
And Skyfall were amazing. I think No Time to Die it had its flaws, but it was way better than a lot of people said it was. Like, a lot of people said it like was really fucking terrible. I thought it was good. I think it could have been better. But I loved Rami Malek as the villain. I didn't like how it like continued strings from Spectre, but even then I still thought it was a great movie. And Spectre was one of those movies that I liked at first, but then it got worse for me as time went on. And I still have yet to see
That one was also too long.
I still have yet to see Quantum of Solace, which I've heard is really bad. I've heard that's the worst of them all.
Quantum of Solace isn't as bad as people make it out to be. It's certainly a step. It's a big step down from Casino Royale, and it's definitely, because here's the thing, it gets sandwiched between Skyfall and Casino Royale, which are two infinitely superior movies to Quantum of Solace. So by comparison, it's not a very good movie, but it's not a terrible. I've certainly seen much worse James Bond movies. But anyway, Daniel Craig just reacted to Amazon's takeover for the character, saying, "My respect for Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson remains undiminished." So I'm going to read out what he had to say. This was an exclusive statement to Variety in which he said, "My respect, admiration, and love for Barbara and Michael remain constant and undiminished. I wish Michael a long, relaxing, and well-deserved retirement, and whatever ventures Barbara goes on to do, I know they will be spectacular, and I hope I can be a part of them." Now, if you guys remember, Daniel Craig wasn't just playing James Bond. Daniel Craig, by the time we got to like the third movie of his 5, he was getting an executive producer credit, and he brought in, all the best talent in the world. Who was the one? I'm forgetting the name of the really popular one of the greatest DPs in Hollywood. He was he came in for, I believe it was Skyfall. He did that night was a James Bond 1923, was it, or 19? John, you know who I'm talking about. It was one. He was a director of photography for like I think the 3rd James Bond movie. But just as an example. Daniel Craig, when he came into this franchise, he wanted to bring in the best talent both in front of and behind the camera, and he basically became a producer and just made sure that from the top down, the directors of photography, obviously the actors, we went from Dame Judi Dench to Ray Fiennes as M. Under Daniel Craig. I mean, all the movies were relatively well received. You had Javier Bardem in Skyfall. Naomi Harris was in a bunch of the movies. I thought Moneypenny was done in a way that was relevant for the time. And so Daniel Craig is somebody who has elevated the James Bond franchise for many a years. Roger Deakins is the one I'm thinking about. Roger Deakins worked on a James Bond movie because Daniel Craig was like, we need the best of the best. It's freaking James Bond we're talking about. We're not going to make a Moonraker here. We're making, Skyfall. We're making No Time to Die. So for him, I mean, he was always very close with the Broccoli's, and you can clearly see here that he still remains loyal to the Broccoli's. It's just, I think at this point, we still don't know how we went from the Broccoli's being so adamantly, stuck with like their particular vision and Amazon being on the other end of the spectrum to making a deal where they just said, all right, we're going to step away. Do you think that the Broccoli's were just holding out for a big payday from literally from the moment that Amazon bought MGM, that the Broccoli's were like, okay, we just wrapped up the Daniel Craig Bond series. We want a big payday.
I think in that regard,
was that the long game?
No, I mean, I think in that regard, they've been with this franchise their entire lives. This is all they really know. I've got to assume there were some serious promises made, whether or not they'll stick to any of those things, whether or not the expectations will, come into fruition. I've got to assume they didn't come to this decision lightly. I'm sure plenty of other people came to the table. Maybe they settled on them because they were the highest bidder, but I don't think that they would just easily walk away from something they've dedicated their entire lives to, just on a whim. So in that regard, I have a little hope, minuscule.
Well, I mean, look, Amazon is shaking things up on the theatrical front. Their theatrical marketing head, Jerry Rich, just left. which is a business of Hollywood thing, but at the same time, making changes. I think now Amazon has finally got full control over the crown jewel that they acquired in that MGM deal. And Jeff Bezos is already out there crowdsourcing the next James Bond potentially. He asked the fans, who do you want to have play James Bond?
Which is like the worst thing you could ever do is go to the general public. As Caleb said earlier, it's going to be Timothy fucking Chalamet. Friggin' and Jared Leto is the Bond villain. That's what we need. Great. Fantastic.
Yeah, and he sends fucking anal beads to Timothy Chalamet as a joke. Yeah, that actually happened on Suicide Squad.
No, it's true. Yes, we know.
Apparently, guys, remember last year, Aaron Taylor Johnson was supposedly offered the role, and then like eventually things like it looks like the rumors, the stories kind of broke down, and nothing came of it. So it's not. We every day get some news. Like this article talks about Tom Hardy, Idris Elba, Henry Cavill, Josh O'Connor, Theo James. All of these names have at some point in time been associated with the character. And now that we are finally at a point where, look, James Bond was stuck in quicksand because it was sinking fast. We weren't really sure when the next Bond casting, no less the next James Bond movie, was going to come from, because as long as Amazon, the distributors, and the Broccoli's, the producers, couldn't agree, we wouldn't get a new Bond movie. But now that Amazon has this creative control, I have a question. If you were Amazon right now, if you were the head of Amazon Studios, which is not Jeff Bezos, but like the person who is in charge of Amazon MGM Studios, who would you put in charge of the James Bond franchise? Would you take the approach, forget if it is a cinematic universe or not? A cinematic universe, by the way, doesn't need to be something like, doing 5 James Bond movies and doing a spin-off movie with Monty Penny here, doing a period piece, or doing a piece on the the MI7 or MI6. You don't need to do a TV show and everything. You could still do just premiere box office James Bond movies.
That's not what they want to do, though.
And
we know.
I know, but what I'm saying is, let's just say, for example, would you kind of continue? Would you do what they're doing over at Star Wars, where Star Wars is part of Lucasfilm, but so is Indiana Jones, and Kathleen Kennedy is in charge of Lucasfilm. She's not in charge of Star Wars. What they don't have over there is a Kevin Feige for Star Wars, or an equivalent, or a James Gunn equivalent for Star Wars, and that's going to cause chaos for that franchise. Probably the biggest franchise in the history of Hollywood that is directionless for most people. Like, we haven't gotten a single Star Wars movie in almost a decade, and the last one was very not well received, and even though it made money, it was diminishing returns from where they started in the Disney era. Whereas you see with Marvel, and more importantly nowadays with DC, having somebody who's clearly in charge of the IP at least gives you a sense of direction. It may not result in every thing that you do being a box office hit. It still gives you direction. Do you think that Amazon's next step now is to bring in a Kevin Feige or a James Gunn equivalent for the James Bond franchise? Because that's what Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson were. But now that they're not calling the shots, and Amazon MGM Studios is a big studio, it's like Disney, it's like Warner Brothers, they have a lot of pies in the oven. So do you think they just give it to the next director who wants to do a James Bond movie, like Christopher Nolan said he wants to do a James Bond movie? Do you think it makes it more likely now that somebody like Christopher Nolan can do it because you don't have the Broccoli's calling the shots, and Christopher Nolan is the kind of director who would want to just do his own thing? Or do you think they bring in somebody like a James Gunn to take over the franchise?
In terms of pie, if we're making analogies in regards to pie, Barbara, and Michael Wilson and Broccoli made the pie. Jeff Bezos is Jason Biggs. I'm just gonna leave it there. That's James Bond is the pie. Jeff Bezos is Jason Biggs. That's all I'll say about that.
Listen, okay? I agree that yes, there needs to be somebody in place to steer the ship. However, people like Bezos, people in his camp, people in these situations are going to refer to the almighty dollar. So if the very first project out the gate does not make the money that they believe it should have, they're going to fire that person. So unfortunately, we have left loyalties and histories and letting people make mistakes or bungle up something here or there. That's gone far behind. The first time you screw up or you don't meet expectations, you're gone. So there's no loyalty anymore. Unfortunately, I would love it if we had somebody like that somebody ran the ship that gave a damn and was going to give it their all, kind of like a James Gunn, kind of like a Feige that had the history behind them, even like a Jon Favreau. But I don't see that being the outcome here unless it succeeds, and it needs to succeed tremendously. I don't see that happening.
I agree with you on a lot of those points, but a counterpoint would be the broccoli. Do you think it's possible, like what the Watcher was saying? Like, let me put this comment back up on screen because I think it's relevant. The Broccoli's are up there in their years, right? Like they're not like in their prime of their careers. James Bond as a character. Pun not intended, but nonetheless apply. So they're obviously, coming close to retirement age. Michael G. Wilson wants to retire from producing movies. Barbara has other projects she wants to take on, because being the shepherd of a James Bond, of a franchise as significant as James Bond, takes up a lot of your time and energy, and it becomes your life, right? And it has been their livelihood for a long time. James Bond as a character is also, like in one of the movies in the 90s, the Brosnan Bond, they were like, you're a Cold War relic, right? You're a misogynist. What was the line? It was
you're a dinosaur from the Cold War.
Misogynistic something like a misogynistic dinosaur, a relic of the Cold War, something like that. Something like it was from M, and I think it was meant to be like a meta critic in the movie, and it applies because it's accurate, because James Bond comes from a time when the world was very different than what it is today. And the Broccoli's, when they took over James Bond, at least, well, when I'm talking about like the Broccoli siblings took it over from their father, that was still the Cold War era. Like you're talking like 70s, 80s, at a time when they were making movies like Moonraker and stuff, and the Russians were the villains. I mean, the Russians probably will be the villains of a future Bond movie again, considering where things are going in the world. But nonetheless, like James Bond is a character, womanizer, like somebody who's out there, being the cool spy, where I think for a lot of what James Bond originally was, today there's a lot of different equivalents. Like you have Jason Bourne, you have Ethan Hunt, who feel like updated versions of what James Bond originally was. And yet James Bond has like it's almost like James Bond is its own movie genre, right? Because of all the things that are uniquely James Bond that you don't get from any other spy franchise. But the point I'm trying to make is the Broccoli's, their ideas for what Bond can be, are they, potentially stuck in the era that they, when they were in the peak of their prime, working with the brand and the franchise, and as a result of that, they were having a hard time figuring out where to go next. Because obviously they probably saw that, these new James Bond movies, while they were making money, they weren't exactly blowing the box office away, and it wasn't like James Bond was, becoming one of the premier franchises in Hollywood. It certainly has a big name still, but it's not Star Wars.
Well, it's still more
of
a British institution than an American
So,
one. So,
do you think now it opens up the possibilities I mentioned earlier? The idea, like Christopher Nolan said, I would love to, like when he was asked, like, what would you like to do? I would love to do a James Bond movie. I mean, I think it was very difficult to see him doing that. He
even said that the snow level in Inception was inspired by On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Exactly.
So, I mean, I would love to see that. I think that's too good to be true. I don't think he would ever work for MGM. I mean, he has a thing going with Universal right now, and I don't, because here's the thing, that would be like, I feel like the most you would get with that, Jeff Bezos or whoever the head of Amazon MGM Studios would have a meeting with Nolan, and then he would immediately say no, because they would want to be the Kevin Feige where they put the control on everything. So what they'll do is what Marvel does is they get indie directors or TV directors that have absolutely no ground, like, or vision themselves, have no clout, and they can fucking parade them on a puppet on strings, do whatever the fuck they want, instead of like getting someone with a creative vision. And even then, when the few times they do, it fails. Like Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Oh, they got Sam Raimi back, but half of that movie you can tell was inserted Marvel bullshit that Sam Raimi probably didn't want to do. Or Chloe Zhao with Eternals. Look how that fucking turned out. Nobody fucking remembers that movie. So I feel like no matter what, like you can get like maybe the best director and all that, they're gonna have like one meeting with this fucker and be like, no, I'm not doing this. And then they're going to get some podunk indie director that has maybe probably some couple good movies to their names, and then make like a shitty Bond movie that doesn't understand the character at all. And we're just going to get a shitty cinematic universe. And then James Bond is going to there's going to be a nail in the coffin at some point. Maybe not immediately, but maybe like 10, 15 years down the line, if we're still a functioning society, which who fucking knows at this point. And so it's like, that's what I'm saying. It's just like maybe it's not yet, but James Bond is dead. On the big screen, James Bond is 100% dead now.
I mean, look, I'm still open to the idea of like, why can't it be a positive necessarily? Because look, the Broccoli's were doing a great job of shepherding the franchise, but they also, like I said, it's bad comparison, but look, the WWE, if you're a fan of wrestling, is a lot better today since Vince McMahon left, because he got to a point where his ideas were no longer relevant to the company that he, turned into a global phenomenon. It's almost like I feel like this might be an opportunity where let's just stick with the Christopher Nolan example for now, because he has outwardly said he would like to do it. Like maybe Christopher McQuarrie or somebody like that would also want to take this on. But let's say Christopher Nolan wants to do it. Right now, Amazon is at a point where expectations are low because the general reaction with the public has been very negative. They could easily just be like, you know what, it can't hurt after Nolan finishes the Odyssey to shoot him a message or set up a meeting and be like, hey Nolan, if we were to give you the reins for a series of James Bond movies, what would you like to do? Like, it doesn't hurt. Kind of like what Christopher Nolan did with the Batman, right? Like when the Batman was basically a franchise that was on the shelf after the 1997 Batman and Robin movie. And at the time, Christopher Nolan wasn't nearly as well known, and they took a chance on him. But then he delivered a trilogy that single-handedly revived, DC on cinema, on the big screen, as well as, of course, Batman. So, does it? Liz, do you think it's at this point maybe opening up James Bond to more possibilities? I'm trying to think of this as a positive, obviously. Do you think there's a chance that Amazon, because Amazon has a track record of doing good work with IP, like we talked about a few examples of that. It's not like everything that they do is terrible, and maybe they don't straight away go and do a whole cinematic universe. Maybe they do find somebody who has a great set of ideas and wants to do a trilogy. Do you think that's a possibility? That because right now it's a blank slate, it's a new start, blank slate, new ideas.
They definitely want to do it. They've already said they want to do it. I think it's a terrible idea. First of all, John, take Marvel's name out your mouth. I'm tired of it, buddy.
Nope.
But they're absolutely going to do that, and I'm not excited for it. Like, I understand where you're coming from. It does open up a lot of possibilities. It opens up employment for a lot of potentially new actors that we haven't seen for a while. It creates jobs. Great. Pick something else. People are already up in arms about every potential casting, right? Every time they cast a new Bond, people lose their fucking mind. Why would you ever try to change things with a franchise that is already has such a deep and embedded fan base, such loyalty, a history behind it? Don't fuck this up. And unfortunately they will. That's why everybody's so upset. That's why it's making such headlines. But that's why you sent us 10 separate linked articles about it in our prep, because people are feeling some kind of way.
It is.
And they're going
to sound like Jerry Seinfeld, I think. The airplane
people are feeling some kind of way. Yeah, gang. Sorry.
Well, I'm just saying, let's keep our minds open to the possibility of Amazon MGM might end up making some of the best Bond movies we might have ever seen. I'm just saying, look, it could go terribly wrong.
I'm sorry. In the chat, Caleb is on fire tonight, gang. Mark Wahlberg is James Bond. Caleb, I appreciate you. You understand what we're talking about. Thank you, Caleb.
Guys, I think
Thank
we
you.
found a Goldfinger.
I'm saying. Friggin' James Bond goes to dunks. Oh my God. Caleb, I love you.
Well,
thank you, Caleb.
Will Ferrell is the villain.
Right. I mean, we've seen it. We've already seen it, but
I'm sure we'll get more details on what went into, the joint venture that has now been put together. Because again, remember, the Broccoli's aren't completely out of the picture. They're still co-owners. They just won't be in charge of the creative decision making. It's kind of similar to
the problem.
Right, but I'm like, it's similar in a way to what's going on with Manchester United in the last couple of years, the football club, where like the Glazer family owns the club and still has a majority stake, but they gave the Jim Ratcliffe's Ineos company, which took over
I don't know that
as
that's
a minority.
A fair comparison, though, because soccer is crazy corrupt, regardless of who owns it and who's a.
Let me explain though.
I don't know.
The idea being that the new minority owners are making all the footballing decisions, meaning like functionally they're in charge, even though they're not the majority owners of the club. So in that sense, Amazon MGM, I don't believe, has bought any more of a stake in the IP. They have bought the creative control of it, which usually goes to the majority owner. But in this case, so far as we know, the level of ownership between the Broccoli's and MGM, Amazon, like that hasn't changed. What has changed is Amazon MGM has creative control. But as part of that now, apparently they're probably gonna. I mean, the joint venture between the Broccoli's and Amazon MGM, they're gonna have to deal with this lawsuit that was filed literally at the beginning of this week, and it kind of went under the radar because we weren't thinking about James Bond as much. But I think it's relevant now because there's an Australian businessman who's filed a legal, basically a legal challenge, a lawsuit to take ownership of the James Bond name on the premise that if you don't use a copyrighted, term or phrase like James Bond for a certain number of years, that it at least 5 years, it says here, that the ownership can then be revoked. And so he wants the name for, I think, like some of it. He's bought a lot of. He basically creates resorts and casinos and stuff, luxury properties. And he wants to use the name for that. Kind of like, if you guys remember back in the day, MGM was bought by the owner of now known as MGM Resorts. And the reason why they're called MGM Resorts is because at one time, the MGM, the studio, was owned by the same person. But then he sold off MGM, the studio, but he kept on a hold of the right to use the MGM name as part of his resorts. So this would be, I feel like this is the closest comparison. And I'm sure this is not the only lawsuit that's out there against, James Bond, the franchise. But I just found it to be interesting that there is a James Bond. I feel like this will get dismissed or settled or something. But I guess this will be the first thing that they have to deal with before they even think about recasting a James Bond.
I mean, listen, at the end of the day, just to kind of wrap this story up, people die, right? So yes, Michael is in his 80s, Barbara is in her 60s. Even if they continued on in their roles, they're going to be gone at some point down the line. So I'm, on the one hand, I'm glad that they're putting, and I'm sure that's part of the reason they've done what they've done at this point. So I'm glad they've started kind of putting things in place and preparing for that eventuality. So in that regard, like, I get it. It could, Lord knows, things could have been much worse if they just kicked the bucket and nobody had anything and it was just a free for all and they were just picking off the carcass of this franchise. So I will always be hopeful. I will always be optimistic, but right now, just hearing this news for the first time, it's a little troubling. That's all I'm going to say. We'll just end with that. But yeah, I don't think this Austrian businessman is, maybe they'll let him name the Casino Royale or some shit. Who knows? But I don't think he's going to get away with anything he's trying to do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the number of ways or directions.
I mean, it's a smart move, though. If that's the law, it's a smart move. He's been paying attention. Clearly, he's been thinking about it for a while.
I think from a more human level, like you mentioned, the Broccoli's wanting to do this at a time when they're in between a whole series. Like, they're not in the middle of doing a series of movies. They don't have somebody who's actively cast in the role. It feels like for them the right time to transition. I'm okay with that. I think we would have liked to have it's just one of those things. It was like a last bastion of IP in a world where big corporate, conglomerates like Disney control things like Star Wars that was once, George Lucas's life's work, and we have seen like it hasn't always gone well. I think the recent history of that doesn't bode well. But that's not to say it can't work well, because
But you
we
know
have
what, though?
seen
I
good
almost
examples of
kind
that
of
too.
wish that this has happened like prior to Daniel leaving. Like, let them do one more movie with all of these changes in place, so we can kind of have like a test run, like a trial run, to see how that goes. So then from there we can say, oh, okay, either we know they make good decisions, or the rest of this shit's gonna suck. But unfortunately, everything's gonna be brand new, and people are going to have feelings about it, and I feel like, again, just like Superman, people feel so strongly about this character that no matter who they cast, it's not going to be the person that it's going to take a while for people to get behind them, and then by the time people are behind them, they end up recasting to somebody else anyway. So it's like, I mean, we're damned if we do at this point.
It's also, look, I'm sure whenever they do cast a new James Bond, the Broccoli's, as long as they're around, will be out there promoting and giving their stamp of approval, because I think they're still, even though they don't have creative control anymore, financially they're still just as invested, because anytime this franchise makes money, they're still getting a cut of that, because it's a joint venture where Amazon and them are working together. Amazon calls the shots. They didn't sell James Bond. They just gave Amazon the creative control on the franchise for what seems like over $1 billion. So they got a good paycheck out of it. But I bet you that whenever we do get a new James Bond, we're going to have the Broccoli's, at least Barbara Broccoli, out there saying, you know what, he's going to do a great job. I might, because otherwise Amazon is going to be like, you know what, this could be a problem. Because if she says this is a terrible person, I'm not really sure, that's going to be a PR nightmare. Like that new version of James Bond would be like dead in the water before it even takes off. So I think, we'll just see where the franchise goes from now. But Amazon is in charge. Netflix is also been in charge of an Avatar TV series. Not very well received, or I guess I should say it was a mixed bag. The live action Avatar series that cost a shit ton of money looked great when the photos were coming out. Wasn't the best received Avatar thing we've seen in a while. I'm not talking about James Cameron's Avatar.
Not the worst, though.
The Last Airbender. But now it looks like the OG creators are back, because they've been working over at Nickelodeon to do a lot more Avatar animated content, including, I think there's movies in the works. But now we know that an Avatar sequel television series called Seven Havens has been ordered at Nickelodeon. It's set after the events of Legend of Korra. John, you read through this article, so I would let you kind of take the lead here. Tell us what's going on here with the new series, and then why it matters, and what you think about it.
So, with Avatar, I was a fan when the original series was running. I remember watching the series finale. I was in a hotel room on vacation, that we were on this fucking tiny TV, and all of us were watching the series finale of Avatar, and that was fucking great. Like the Chosen Son or whatever. But great stuff. Amazing series. One of the best that Nickelodeon has ever given us. Then we got Legend of Korra. I will say the first season was pretty good. And then it just and that was all that was intended. We were only supposed to get that one season. And then we got 3 more. And you can tell that they were not supposed to exist. And it was just one of those shows that just got worse and worse as time went on, and it just became more and more aggravating. Korra became a worse and worse character. The supporting characters became more and more one note. And then now for future Avatar, like avatars, is they can't even connect with Avatar Past because Korra fucked it up. And now this series, obviously the next Avatars in line, Avatar in line is going to be an Earthbender. And so now we have and apparently they're going to be twins, where one of them is the Avatar but the other isn't. It would have been interesting if both of them were the Avatar. That's an interesting
dynamic. I mean, you could see all kinds of political stuff.
Oh, hey, look, twins where one is the super powered one and one isn't. Where have I seen that before? Superman and Lois. But but it's certainly an interesting idea. But the interesting part is it feels like Nickelodeon is leaning into how Korra is a terrible character and how she beyond fucked the world, because apparently it's going to be, it is a post-apocalyptic story set in a dystopia where everybody hates the Avatar, and everybody, spirits and people alike. So the spirits hate the Avatar after what Korra did, and people hate the Avatar for after what Korra did. And that's honestly kind of funny. Nickelodeon really leaning into like how much they screwed the pooch with Legend of Korra. I mean, I will say the first season was good up until they revealed that Amon was a bloodbender. Then it just went downhill from there, because then it just became stupid. And so, yeah, it was just Legend of Korra just became really bad really quickly. And now it seems like they wrote themselves into a corner with how Korra completely and utterly butt fucked this universe. And now they have to roll with the punches. Hopefully we get something good out of this. I don't expect it, as long as I don't know if it's, I think they might be different people now. And I hope, and even if it's not, I hope they learn from their mistakes and realize why Legend of Korra was so, like, it became so terrible by the end of it. They were more focused on like saying something rather than like having a clear-cut story, because it was like, it just got so dumb and so confusing. Like, there were some really good ideas, but it was like a lot of it was half-baked. Korra just became so unlikable. I'm like, oh, but she has PTSD. I don't give a fucking shit. She was a fucking unlikable bitch from the beginning, and she never grew as a character. She just became more insufferable, but then she eventually had a reason to be insufferable because she had PTSD. But like, okay, and that's an excuse, I guess. But yeah, it just, I hope it's good. I know they're making a movie where it takes place in between Avatar and Legend of, like, Last Airbender and Legend of Korra, and I think it's gonna be like an older Aang. I think that's what it is, but I know they're planning a movie, and it's an animated movie.
They are, yeah. I mean, and it's kind of, it was in response to the fact that the creators left the Netflix show, because they were part of that originally, and you know, over creative differences for what, I guess, what Netflix wanted. So they were like, you know what, we're gonna go do what we want to do back over at Nickelodeon, and we can do it animated, and probably better. So I mean, this show is going to be a 2D animated series, a similar animation style, 26 episodes. They're going to be half-hour apiece, and it's going to be spread across 2 seasons, or like they're going to call them book 1 and 2, the way Avatar has always done. So we're going to get 2 13-episode seasons, and it looks like you know, they're currently in production, you know, on the series. So it's already greenlit and moving forward. So yeah, Avatar 7 Havens. It's going to be the latest in a franchise that has been going on now for, what, like a decade and a half, has had its ups and downs on the big screen, but at least on the small screen, it's been very well received with the last 2 series we got, and then hopefully this new one. Like you said, John, there's going to be a time jump, new characters that are addressing the events of Legend of Korra. It's a sequel to that. Let's see where it goes. I'm excited. I'm interested. We'll just have to see, you know, when Nickelodeon finally comes out with it. So with that, guys, we have to now move on from the news section of the show into the quick hits section of the show. So John, would you please do us the honor of putting on that beautiful elevator music, bossa nova elevator music that we like for the quick hits portion of the show? All right, okay, I've got the quick hits loaded up. Let's get into them, shall we? So, as it says, quick hits, we're gonna spend a lot less time on this than we did on the news. But let's do the quick hit, shall we? The first quick hit. There's a new Tom Holland Spider-Man movie that's going a week later in July 2026. Of course, we know that the 4th Spider-Man movie is set to come out, you know, I believe in like next year, 2026. So Sony and Marvel Studios' new untitled Spider-Man and Tom Holland movie is from the director Destin Daniel Cretton, who directed previously Shang-Chi. It's going a week later on July 31st instead of July 24th. So before, the release date was supposed to be July 24th. Now is July 31st. What's so special about it? It's the last Friday in July, which is essentially where Marvel Studios dropped Deadpool and Wolverine to an opening weekend of $211.4 million domestic and it made almost $500 million, $444.7 worldwide.
Nostalgia will do that, ladies and gents.
And then also, this is another interesting fact Deadline points out. Spidey on its old date would have come out immediately a week after the Matt Damon-led Christopher Nolan movie, The Odyssey, which releases on July 17th. So now there's a 2-week gap so that, it gives itself a little more breathing room. So, of course, it's going up against Paw Patrol 3. But I'm like, I don't think that's going to be a problem. Are you guys surprised that they moved this by a week? Do you think it had anything to do with The Odyssey's release date? Or was it just...
They want the weekend all to themselves. It's a totally understandable. People do it all the time. It's, it is what it is.
That's fair.
Can't wait to see it.
Fair.
Good for you, Tom.
All right, cool. Well, moving on to the next quick, shall we? Severance has now surpassed Ted Lasso to become Apple TV Plus's most watched series with the season 2 launch. I'm surprised in some ways because Ted Lasso was just that popular, but I'm also not surprised because Severance has generated more conversation about any Apple TV show that I've seen ever, quite frankly. And I'm a big Apple TV Plus fan. I watch For All Mankind. I obviously watch Severance, C. I've seen pretty much every show that they launched with. I still watch like Foundation. Like they've got, Dark Matter. They've got what was it? Invasion. Like Sci-Fi is their thing.
You've watched everything.
I watched a lot on Apple TV Plus.
That's impressive.
So for Severance, I mean, obviously Ted Lasso, and what's the one with Harrison Ford, Shrinking, that's on right now. That's a great show I started recently. So I'm surprised and yet I'm not, because Severance is a huge hit. It's like a water cooler show. It's probably the first true water cooler show that Apple TV Plus has had. Like the Game of Thrones equivalent, where people watch it and then want to talk about it. Of course, the mystery genre of it kind of lends itself to that kind of conversation. But I'm still excited that Severance is now like climbed up the ranks. Silo is another one that I watch on there. But those shows don't generate or slow horses that same kind of conversation that Severance does, guys. Are you surprised by this? Does this, as two people who have not watched Severance, does this make you more interested and excited to check it out now that you know it is like the biggest thing on Apple TV Plus?
I mean, it's on the list, but I feel bad because I have not yet watched Ted Lasso all the way through this year. I've watched the entire series 5 times already, and it's my fault. It's my fault that they dropped in the numbers. I apologize, Ted Lasso and all of its fans. But no, Severance is on the list. I've heard nothing but good things. I think, people just get excited, especially, when you have to wait in between projects or whatever. So it doesn't surprise me that the numbers are doing so well, because everybody was like, oh, yay, the first episode and the second season's back. And, it makes sense to me.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see where this new season ends up, because right now, actually today, like the day, at least depending on when you watch this, but when we were doing the show, a new episode dropped. Like this morning, actually, they released it at 9 p.m. the night before. So you could have seen it as early as 9 p.m. Eastern time on Thursday. But I haven't seen the new episode yet, and I'm excited to go check it out. So Severance, good on you, and I'm excited and I'm happy for everybody, Ben Stiller and everybody on the show. Now, moving on to Street Fighter. There's a new Street Fighter coming out soon, guys, and it's now found a director. Kitao Sakurai will direct the live-action Street Fighter film, which is set to release on March 20th, 2026. Are you guys excited? Do you know anything about who this director is? At a time we're getting a second Mortal Kombat movie, we're gonna get a Street Fighter movie? I'm like, are we just going back in time to the 90s? As a 90s kid, I'm excited that we're getting a Street Fighter live-action movie to add on to a Mortal Kombat franchise. Even though the Mortal Kombat movies aren't the greatest, the action was fun. So I'm like, this would be interesting.
As long as it's better than the shitty Jean-Claude Van Damme one, then it should be okay. Because as we all know, the only good thing about that movie was Raul Julia's performance. But yeah, hope. I don't really know this guy. I looked him up. Don't really know his shit, but like, hopefully he does a good job. I might check it out if it's good. I know I played like the original Street Fighter 2 on the SNES, and it's a lot of fun. But that's the extent of my knowledge. I've never played any of like the sequels or anything like that. So yeah, I hope he does a good job, and hopefully, does a better job than the '90s one. Does a better job than the new Mortal Kombat, because apparently that sucks too.
I'm gonna let you guys take over the next. But sorry, go ahead, Liz. You were saying.
I'm just saying, I love a really shitty film, so I love the Jean-Claude Van Damme version. I love all the Mortal Kombat films. So I hope that if this isn't good, it's at least on par, equally as shitty as those, because I'll watch that over and over again. They'll get money from me for sure. So we'll see. I'm always excited for some. I'll see it regardless, as you all know. I'll see it regardless. So hopefully, it's exciting. That's all I got.
I'm gonna let you do this next one, John. What do you think about Elden Ring potentially getting a new movie?
Could be cool. Never played the games. Game. I that would be cool. I would actually watch it, because this is just one of those things where I wouldn't play the game, because it's one of those things that takes up way too much time that I don't have. So, and I suck at video games, so I'll just keep playing Sims. But I will, if it's good, I'll gladly take it. But George, buddy, why not write the new fucking Game of Thrones book? That would be
Legit,
great,
dude. Like, how dare he even move on to another project without finishing?
Well, I mean, he's written a lot. I mean, he wrote this thing for like years, but it's like,
my point is, how dare he? That's all I'm gonna say.
But yeah, would be fun. As long as it's good, as long as they get someone who understands and likes the source material, and instead of like, yeah, this source material thing fucking sucks. Let's just do whatever we want, and then when the fans say it sucks, we'll just blame them, call them racist or something. So yeah, hopefully it's good and get someone who understands the source material. Then it'll be a bang up job, and maybe I'll go watch it. Make it like big epic fantasy, please. Don't like give us another. Don't give us like Rings of Power. Give us like something actually good to watch, like big medieval fantasy. Give us like a little bit of surrealness to it. Like, don't just make it like boring to look at, please. Anyway, move on. Marvel is rumored to be developing a live-action TV series following Young Mutant students called X Academy. Plan is for it to lead into the MCU X-Men reboot. Don't care.
Yeah, they're going to have to do an awful lot to impress me with this one, so we'll see what happens. Good luck to you.
I can't wait for Marvel to drop the ball heavily on X-Men, and then everyone's going to realize that most of the Fox X-Men movies were fucking goated, and everyone's going to start going back to those again.
The very first one was goated for sure. The other ones, we had our issues. Let's move along.
X2, X-Men Days of Future Past, and Logan are some of the greatest comic book movies of all time. Don't at me.
Move along.
They're building a new set that looks like a freaking city for Doomsday.
Doomsday set under
Marvel,
construction.
baby!
Filming begins March to April. Yeah, it's not even like an actual set. It's just green screen, so they can, give speeches.
It might
to
be
their
whatever that thing is called. What's that thing called?
The AR wall.
Yeah, what's that thing called?
The volume.
The volume, AR wall.
It's probably the volume. Shush, John. Shush.
Oh
Volume's cool, man. It's cool.
And then they can film in front of it and then talk down to the villain and give them a sappy emotional speech that completely undoes everything.
Yeah, okay, because Wonder Woman defeated the last guy with a...
Yeah, I'm not gonna...
I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it, John.
I mean, I don't want to hear it.
We all got problems, John. We all got our problems.
I have said many times that the third act for Wonder Woman is not very good, even though the rest of the movie is excellent, but that's beside the point. Move on, Dan.
Move on.
Jason Momoa as Duncan Idaho might return in Doom Messiah. I call bullshit because the man is dead and didn't show up in any other books. So, unless it's a flashback, which I highly doubt, yeah, this isn't happening. This is just bullshit scooper crap. So, moving on.
That's good information I did not have, John, so thank you. I don't care for the character's name. I do love Jason Momoa.
I mean, I like the name Duncan Idaho. It's just like, it's so funny that a character in this illustrious sci-fi epic.
It's the most
Duncan
name for any character in
Hines. No, it's if Duncan Hines branded a powdered potato mix No, I don't care for the name, but he's wonderful, looks great, would be happy to see him, but if it's not canon, I don't want him in it. So thank you, John, for that information.
By the way, we have Magical Sky Wizard, The Watcher, Figure Drawing, Angelica in the chat, Enterprising, all of you guys joining in. Of course, Caleb's been here from the start. Man of Steel Magnolias has joined
Caleb,
in as
you're
well.
killing it tonight, bud. You're killing it, Caleb.
So, you know, with that brings us to the end of the quick hits. Not very many of them today, John. So why don't you?
Yeah, so not half an hour. Sorry,
Yeah.
Caleb.
But hey, you know what? That brings us to the end of the news portion of the show, guys. So let us know in the comments down below what you thought about it. Of course, we spent a lot of our time talking about James Bond because that was the biggest story of the week. And beyond that, of course, we talked about the new Avatar series that's in the works, Seven Havens. You have, of course, all the quick hits, whether it's, the Spider-Man movie moving back by a week in 2026 to give the Odyssey a little more breathing room at the box office, or were you interested in potentially the new Dwayne Johnson and Leonardo DiCaprio and Emily Blunt led Martin Scorsese movie that's looking to get a deal over at whichever studio chooses to put up the money for that movie. So with that said, guys, let us know down in the comments what you thought about the news and quick hits portion of the show. But we are, of course, far from done on the show. Now it's time to talk about the movie of the week, The Monkey. It's been basically the last couple of years been like the years of the monkey, the year of the monkey, the years of the monkey, because you've had a lot of monkey related movies and TV shows, and the latest is out in movie theaters now. John went to see it. Liz is going to see it soon. So I wanted to start off with you, John. What are your thoughts on this? I don't think we're gonna get too far into the spoilery territory.
No,
because,
I'm not gonna talk
if you guys
about
haven't
spoilers.
seen it yet, we don't want to spoil it for you. But John, what do you think about The Monkey? You went and saw it. Give us your thoughts and would you recommend it?
Now I am a little bit biased because I have loved pretty much every Osgood Perkins movie, with the exception of Gretel and Hansel. I think that's his only weak movie. It's still pretty good. It just feels like a diet version of The Witch, and not in a good way. It's very slow and very boring. And it kind of just goes through the motions, not very interesting. But the rest of his films I have loved. I mean, if you follow me on Letterboxd, you can see that every single one of his movies outside of Gretel and Hansel, I've given a 5 out of 5, and that includes The Monkey. I would probably give it a 9.5 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10. I thought it was genuinely fantastic. It's not going to be for everyone. It's not going to be the type of movie that hits for everyone, but I thought it worked very well as something that on the surface is entertaining fluff, but below the surface is something a little more. Now, I think Theo James gave a great performance as the dual role of Bill and Hal Shelbourne. I thought it had just so many genuinely funny moments. This had more funny moments in it than most comedies that come out nowadays, but more so, genuinely so. They're not accidental. The idea is silly. This is a very silly and exaggerated sense of reality. It's not totally real, and I like it when you could tell it takes place in the real world, but it's not quite. I think that enhances what it's going for. And I thought you could see her, Elijah Wood. He's in it for 5 minutes. He's not in it for very long. Tatiana Maslany, she has definitely redeemed herself from She-Hulk Attorney at Law. But I saw her on Broadway, so that was already clear for me. But if you're this bitch sucks, she's not. Go see this movie. She's great in it. But I think Osgood Perkins is definitely trying to branch out of his wheelhouse. His first two movies feel very similar, very slow, atmospheric, build upon kind of supernatural, demonic kind of movies. Like Black Coat's Daughter, which had Emma Roberts, Kiernan Shipka, and Lucy Boynton in it. Very well done, very creepy. I'm the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House, one of the most underrated and greatest horror films that have come out this century. It did have a little bit more of a supernatural edge to it, but it took it had a clear use of shadows and knew how to make you unsettled. I think Gretel and Hansel, I think that was a stepping stone for him. I feel like because of that movie, even though it didn't do everything that I wish it could have done, it was a period piece for him. That was new for him. So maybe it just didn't hit his stride. But I like how he experimented with it. And then Longlegs was more like a crime thriller horror drama. So had the same feel as his other movies, but still felt very different. This was totally something new. This was like Final Destination meets like Terrifier in a way, except way better than both. It's you know what it feels like? It feels like drugged up Stephen King wrote this movie, and I think that was the intention. Like this is Stephen King on drugs entertainment, and I mean that as a full compliment. This movie was just like a fever dream, and it does. Haha. It's a total fever dream. It's surreal. It's weird. It has a lot of bonkers imagery. It's just insane. It's insane. And I love what they did with. And you also have plenty of Stephen King Easter eggs. I won't spoil them here, but you'll know when you see them if you're a big Stephen King fan like I am. At least in the movies. I still need to get through some of his books, but I'm a terrible reader nowadays. But for the most part, yeah, I thought this was extremely entertaining. But what I liked beneath the surface, unfortunately I can't get into it without spoiling stuff, which I won't get into. But I feel like there is more of like a meta-ness to the whole thing, because I feel like when you see certain things happen in the movie, it feels like Osgood Perkins is making fun of it, and I really liked that, especially if anybody who here has seen it and watched it, especially during the ending. I feel like that's definitely a commentary on certain aspects of films nowadays, and I really liked that. And I think, but I won't get too far into that. But overall, I thought this was very fun. A lot of blood, not crazy amounts like Terrifier 3, but it has like on maybe a little bit less than like Hard Eyes, but yeah, it's like somebody on coke wrote this movie, and I think that was the intention. This definitely feels like, yeah, coked out Stephen King writing this. I haven't read the original short story, so I don't know how it compares to that. I don't know. I think Osgood Perkins said he's like, I was originally going to call it Stephen King's The Monkey, but it just kind of became its own thing because there's only so much you can adapt from a short story to a film that you have to like embellish certain things and change certain things to make it work, and I think it worked. Again, it's not going to be for everybody. I've heard mostly mixed things. Some people hate it. Some people thought it was like, it was pretty good, but lesser than Longlegs. But I loved it. I do think it's probably my third favorite of his movies. I prefer, my favorite of his is I'm the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House. I think that was I was gobsmacked with how amazing that movie was. And then my second favorite is probably Longlegs, then Black Coat's Daughter, then Gretel and Hansel. But like those top four are like 9.5 to 10. I would say this is probably a 9.5. There's some half-baked ideas that didn't go anywhere, but outside of that, I think it worked. I really liked it a lot. I highly recommend it. But if you don't like it, I would not be shocked.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
that is my review of The Monkey.
look, when you look at the Rotten Tomatoes rating, 77% for the critics, 73% for the audiences. 73% is a low number for audiences, relatively speaking. But I mean, this isn't necessarily the kind of movie that everybody would love anyway. But by the way, Antonio stopping by in the chat. I also had Fiona earlier, moderator Fiona now. Liz, I think you missed that update. Fiona now moderates the chat, so be careful what you put in there. But as far
I'm not scared.
I'm just saying. By the way, deadline. The Monkey, as we talked about, it's already playing in theaters, so it's off to a good start. It's looking at potentially doing up to 14 million at the opening weekend, which would be a second best debut for a Neon movie. Captain America: Brave New World, of course, is leading in mid to high 20s, which is a big drop from its opening weekend. That's a huge drop, actually. But as far as the Monkey goes, I think it's aiming for like close to like $1.5–2 million to start on opening day or previews, which has already happened. And now for the whole weekend, 14 million isn't a bad number. Second highest for Neon. I think that's can only bode well for the movie. Also, I saw this article today, and I think we're not gonna go into it in too much detail, but Osgood Perkins was talking about, like, you know, how he was very creative and kind of like went out of his usual toolbox, like you said, John, with this movie and giving it a bit of a personal touch. Gallons of blood. So I recommend you guys give this a read. It's in Variety. So the movie overall looks very interesting. Theo James, I just love that he's diversifying his portfolio of works. So guys, let us know what you thought about the movie. Did you see it? Have you been interested in seeing it? Angelica says she's gonna go see it on Monday. So let us know in the comments down below what you thought about the movie. The Monkey, of course, John, I believe, gave it a recommend, and Liz will go see it in a couple of days.
I'm seeing it on Sunday. Can't wait.
I'm sure we'll talk about it again and get Liz's thoughts on the movie. But in the meantime, guys, hit the like button, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell. We do movie reviews on the channel once a week, every week, sometimes twice a week, actually. We did some on Monday, and now we're doing it again on Friday. So be sure to stop by here for your favorite movie reviews. But we're not done yet. I'm going to be saying that a lot because today's show is packed to the brim, because now it's time for MCU Weekly, everybody. So let's dive into the latest from the world of the MCU. We already had a little bit of MCU news in the quick hits earlier in the show if you've been watching live, but now we're gonna dive into some stuff that is more MCU specific. Liz, so you are the big purveyor of, you're the big fan of the MCU here, so I want to start out by bringing this story to the fore. Marvel has apparently paused all development work on Nova, Strange Academy, and Terror Inc. They were all going to be TV series, but it looks like under Brad Vinderbaum, who's now in charge of Marvel Television and Marvel Animation, all three of those shows are no longer happening. I'm going to read a little bit of this article before we dive into the conversation. So this was an exclusive report in Deadline yesterday where Marvel Television has paused development on those three projects I mentioned. The sources for Deadline stress that these projects were never officially greenlit. So we know Nova is probably the one that we've been hearing about the longest amongst those three, but none of them officially ever got a green light. Now they still could potentially be made at some point, but right now it just looks like they're shifting priorities. So I have a question for you, Liz. I mean, are you surprised that these three shows are no longer in active development? Do you think this is part of how Marvel is now doing things differently? Because if you remember, they were doing things by executive committee. They didn't have showrunners. And then, you know, we obviously had a big mix of quality, like, you know, a lot of good shows. Like you had Miss Marvel, you had WandaVision, but then you had some stuff that was really middle of the road, like Moon Knight, and then some stuff that people just outright hated or just didn't connect with. So they've had a mixed bag over on Disney Plus. Now that they sort of have shifted to a more traditional model where Brad Vinderbaum is bringing in showrunners, like we have a showrunner for Daredevil Born Again. In that kind of a television world, you get TV shows that go through development, even get a pilot and then don't get picked up. So do you feel like this is the start of Marvel kind of going in that direction where we'll hear about ideas, but not every idea is going to come to fruition, or they might just shelve it for a while? What are your thoughts on this news?
I mean, it's always a good idea to step back, regroup, rethink, restructure. So I'm not disappointed. I'm not mad. I'm not even necessarily surprised. They sometimes do a little too much, as we know. So if they're, you know, kind of rethinking their upcoming projects and trying to make things the best they possibly can, that's great. If they're doing it just simply because they're just not ready for them yet, also great. I feel like I'd rather them put things on hold or scrap them completely rather than rush the job. So, we'll see what happens. I anticipate Nova will definitely come to fruition. The other two, we'll see what happens.
Yeah. By the way, Angelica watching live asking the question, John, what was your number for your review of The Monkey? Do you care to add? John's not on camera right now, so I don't know if he stepped away, but I think in the live in our private chat for the show, John mentioned he gave it a 9.5 out of a 10. So he really loved the movie. But let's move on to the next story from the world of Marvel. Now, Liz, Captain America 4 Brave New World has now been out for about a week and a half. Is going into its second weekend at the box office. Julius Onah, was a first time outing for him with the MCU. He recently did an interview explaining all the cameos in the movie, what they replaced with the reshoots, defending even Harrison Ford, because there was a report out there from somebody who supposedly worked on the movie saying that Harrison Ford was a real diva, and he was just correcting the report saying, those reports are pretty much false. He was a wonderful, easy to work with, and he loved, just doing all the motion capture work, and he was enthusiastic. So before we dive into all of that, I wanted, since we talked about the movie earlier in the week and you weren't on the show at the time, but you have since seen Captain America 4, I want to get your thoughts on the movie, and then we can dive into a little bit more of what Julius Onah said.
Yeah, gang, I had been kind of naysaying this the whole time. I was not pleased with the clips that they sent out. I wasn't necessarily pleased with the timing of the trailers. I thought they kind of rushed everything last minute when they should have been advertising it more throughout all of 2024. But you know what, gang? I was pleasantly surprised. Marvel very rarely lets me down, and they didn't let me down with this one either. I left quite pleased. The biggest thing for me, though, and I know this is going to be kind of a weird thing to say. Harrison Ford came in because the previous actor that played General Thunderbolt had passed away, and unfortunately, I kind of kept forgetting who Harrison Ford was supposed to be throughout the film. Like, they keep talking about I was a wartime general, all this history, talking about Steve Rogers, talking about they mentioned the Sokovia Accords throughout the entire film. And it's believe me, it's great. I'm really, really pleased they finally brought up, the celestial being from Eternals. They're slowly starting to connect into the X-Men stories. I'm glad that they're starting to really bring everybody together. And it's making me hopeful for the future. But I had a really hard time connecting to the story because I kept forgetting who Harrison Ford was.
Yeah.
No fault of his own, but I almost wish they just didn't replace that character. Like, maybe they needed to, obviously, for the story. But it was kind of a hard sell for me to, put all of this history behind somebody who's relatively brand new. So that was my one thing. And then also the writing itself was just mid, gang. I mean, I said it before when we got that one little clip, of Anthony Mackie fighting that big dude. It reminded me of like really old school, like Marvel writing. It didn't have any kind of oomph. All of the jokes were mid. But I will say it's been revealed that Bucky's running for Congress, so I'm looking forward to seeing what happens.
One of the
there.
cameos.
Yes, so I'm looking forward to seeing. Is Thunderbolt's pre-campaign? Is Thunderbolt's post-campaign? Does he lose and say, fuck it, I'm just gonna go fight people again? And so I'm interested about all of that. But I did enjoy it. I was pleasantly surprised with how much I enjoyed it. Fiona, that doesn't surprise me at all, quite frankly. You and I have very different taste in things. So I was happy with it. I got my shield, my popcorn bucket, my Captain America cup. And I got the little Captain America helmet. So
Brave New World.
Yeah, oh my God. Anyway,
get out of
so
here. John, you have the popcorn
John,
bucket
too. You
too.
got a shield too, dude. Don't even act like, please.
Come on now.
You still gave them your money. I don't even want to hear it. So no. So again, was it the best Marvel film ever? No, we knew it wasn't going to be. But you know what? Anthony Mackie did the damn thing, and good for him. And I'm looking forward to seeing him more as Captain America. I think he did a good job. So we'll see. I don't really care for this Falcon guy. But
I do
again,
like
that's the writing's fault. It's not his fault.
Joaquin Torres. I enjoyed some of his stuff. He kind of gave it a bit of the humor. One thing I will say coming out of this movie, you've got some of the key players here in this image, and I think I want to kind of address what you said earlier. I struggled a little bit. I know all the details. Like I followed this franchise very closely, even though I'm obviously a big DC fan, but I'm also a big Marvel fan. And so for me, watching this movie, I knew who Thunderbolt Ross is as a character, and I knew that Harrison Ford was playing him. Right. I still, on an emotional level, had a hard time connecting the dots sometimes because
there was no connection. Yeah,
and it wasn't because I was confused necessarily. It was because this movie felt like it was connecting to the events of The Incredible Hulk, which came out all the way back in 2008, a movie that not a lot of people remember or saw back in the early days of the MCU. So, and then William Hurt played the character for so long that I think in all the big movies where we have seen him, William Hurt playing Thunderbolt Ross, it was in a secondary role. Like, he was one of the supporting characters in Civil War and stuff. He made like a cameo in Black Widow. But in all of those instances, he was never at the forefront. And so for a lot of people, they were like, wait a second. So that's the character that now Harrison Ford is playing. So you're asking him to make that one leap. The fact that they've changed actors. Remember when Don Cheadle took on, instead of Terrence Howard, next time, baby, Don Cheadle was like, I'm here. Let's move on. Like, that was like 2 lines when he shows up in the courtroom in Iron Man 2. He's like, I'm here. I get it. Like that was like an in-jest way to address the fact that it's a different actor playing the role. But in this case, you're talking about people connecting the dots, not between Iron Man 1 and Iron Man 2. You're talking about recasting a character that hasn't been a lead or one of the big starring characters in a MCU movie since The Incredible Hulk. Right. And we haven't seen him in a number of years. The pandemic has happened. Harrison Ford coming in. I think they did like one scene in this movie where there was like a press conference where he's got the mustache on there, and then they in dialogue addressed the idea that, oh, you lost the mustache, looks good on you, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I was like, maybe what they needed to have done, and it's a little controversial potentially because it might be like, are you erasing the legacy of William Hurt and what he did with the character? But I feel like they needed to maybe give us a scene, or maybe even something, either like redo a scene where you replace William Hurt's version of the character, maybe from Civil War, for example, when he's in the room with the Avengers, and show that it was Harrison Ford there. So people are like, oh, he's that character? Like, because for a lot, like for yourself even, Liz, like you love these movies, you love the MCU, and you had a hard time sometimes connecting the dots. So
but again, that's the problem too, right? Like you were saying, if they replaced him in an older scene, again, there's a very good possibility that the majority of audiences have not seen that film or that TV show, or to catch that cameo and still make that connection, because Marvel has so many things and they try to continue the story throughout. So that was a miss, but at the same time, there's nothing you can do. The guy died, and so other than that, again, it wasn't the best, it wasn't the worst, it was mid overall. I thought the action was pretty good. I thought the Red Hulk looked great. I dug him. So and I thought their action scene was pretty good. In the trailer, it made it seem like Harrison's Red Hulk threw the shield, and that's what destroyed the White House. And in fact, he actually used Anthony Mackie himself to destroy the White House. So I'm in the theater. I'm like, oh damn, like that was poor. But also at the same time, like, Anthony Mackie only has his suit, and his suit is not fully made of vibranium. I think it's just his wings that are, and the shield itself.
Well, no, so apparently the suit was made of vibranium, but
he doesn't have the super suit regardless.
No, but the guy he's fighting had like adamantium daggers, so he got through them, which was a detail that I found out after seeing the movie because it wasn't made apparent in the film. Anyway, and he had like Kevlar lining.
So Anthony, it's like Batman being thrown through a movie, like through a building. Like, I don't care how much protection you have on, you're still a human being made of flesh and bone. So that kind of thing, I was like, Anthony Mackie should be dead right now.
He should have been, yes. Because the shield wouldn't protect you from like the shield will dissipate some of the force, but you're still gonna feel your bones getting crushed
wrapped around him a lot of the time to protect him, but still, I was like, we're pushing it. I don't know. But it was just, again, it was enjoyable. I was happy with it. So so again, but the question is, so Thunderbolt Ross, what does he have to do with Thunderbolts? Why has no one tried to make that connection this whole time? Because we've heard.
I was really hoping that there would be some sort of
You know?
connecting tissue at the end of this movie. The post-credit scene here doesn't really do that. It more or less
which
kind
is
of
again
predicts
why I'm
very
questioning
ominously
whether
the
or
future
not,
of the multiverse instead,
Right.
which
well, so
very
again,
generic.
That's why I'm questioning whether or
Yeah.
not Thunderbolts comes before Bucky
No, I
tries to
think-
run for Congress or after. But then
No,
also
no.
he keeps making reference to wanting Anthony Mackie, wanting Captain America to restart the Avengers. So are the Thunderbolts gonna eventually be joining the Avengers? Are they gonna be the B Squad? Are they gonna, so there's got to be some connection there.
I mean, it depends on how many of them survive to make it to the Doomsday movie, but I will say in the Thunderbolts trailer, you do see Bucky wearing like a suit and tie at some point. So I guess at least at the beginning of the movie, he's still running for Senate, which is quite the turnaround for him. From going from being a wanted fugitive all across Europe to now running for Senate. I guess we have seen crazier things in real life. So anyway, but what I will say is the movie had its moments. I personally, regardless of the overall movie falling short of my expectations, thought, and Angelica, for example, saying she's not even going to go see it in movie theaters. So like, I'm sure a lot of people at this point are going to wait until it's in Disney Plus or something. But I thought, despite the fact that the movie itself was lacking in a lot of ways, I mean, some of the action was great, some of the action was not so great. The plot felt more put together than what a lot of people expected, given that this movie went through a lot of reshoots. But at the same time, it felt jagged is the word that I used to describe it to Fiona when we went to see it. But the other thing I'm going to mention, it had its moments, right? Like where the line where Bucky's cameo comes in, and this is where we can get into the Julius Ona article a little bit, talking about like, Steve Rogers gave them somebody to look up to, you give them somebody to aspire toward, which I thought was like a great way to differentiate the two Captain Americas, because until now, Captain America has been partly being defined by the fact that he's a super soldier. And obviously, Sam did not take the serum. One of the best lines in the movie is like when he's fighting the Hulk, and spoiler alert for if you haven't seen the film, where he's like, Bucky's full of shit. I should have taken the serum. Bucky's full of shit. I did giggle at that quite a lot.
Let's talk about that as well. I don't know what this recent trend with Marvel is, but why are we, or movies in general? Again, I had the same problem with Red One. They said shit or bullshit about 10 different times in the film. I'm not a fan of that at all. These are supposed to be family-friendly films. Just because we're getting more okay with that word as a society, we don't need to be throwing it in there. I'm sorry. And this is coming from me, the biggest sailor you'll ever meet in real life. So I'm just saying it's unnecessary. Marvel, cut it out. Get better writers. Don't be throwing curses in there unnecessarily, because it's just dumb.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not going to trigger the MPA rating to turn into rated R if they say the
no, I know that, but like regardless.
I hear you. I do. I mean,
Captain America should not be cursing. Let's go there.
Remember the whole thing in Age of Ultron, like when the whole Avengers teased him for the English language anyway. But I think the Thunderbolts connection, like the Watcher was implying, because in the comics, the Thunderbolts is like the team of Avengers in a manner of speaking. They're not really Avengers, but that is created by Thunderbolt Ross. Given that he's no longer the president at the end of this movie, again, spoiler alert. I think where we're headed now is potentially, like the Thunderbolts being like a derogatory term in a manner of speaking. And that's why in the trailer, when Red Guardian says we should call ourselves the Thunderbolts, and Bucky's like quick to correct him, no, we're not calling ourselves that. I think that ties into more maybe the idea that Thunderbolts isn't meant to be we're gonna proudly accept that as the moniker of our team. But as far as these cameos go, there weren't many of them in the movie, and then part of what Julius Onis talks about in this article is bringing in Liv Tyler, returning to the MCU for the first time since the Incredible Hulk, to play the daughter of Thunderbolt Ross, and that was something that was at the core of the story. I just felt that it was done in a way that wasn't very well written, like you said, Liz. The movie didn't have the best dialogue, the best writing. Like he keeps his central motivation in this movie for Harrison Ford's President Ross is he wants to make things right with his daughter. And yet when it comes time to talk down the Red Hulk, Anthony Mackie's Captain America is the one doing it in the middle of the street where they wanted to, he wants to go take her for a walk in the cherry blossoms. And instead of having basically what they did in the theatrical cut of Justice League, like where the nuclear option was Lois Lane to stop a Superman from killing Batman. Here they should have brought in Betty Ross to do that.
Right.
But instead, the totally missed opportunity. And you could tell they did reshoots there anyway. Like Anthony Mackie was clearly standing in front of the green screen talking him down. You could tell that in the shot the background was fake.
Yeah. I agree with that for sure.
I thought that was a missed opportunity. Like they should have done that. Like that's one area where I was expecting all of that setup to have a payoff. Instead, she shows up later on in the Raft prison where now Ross is inside. He's on the opposite side of the prison versus when he once upon a time put Sam Wilson behind bars, and now he's the one. So the irony wasn't lost on them. I like that connection that they brought the Raft back.
Hey, the Raft is cool. So yeah.
But to me, like there were a lot of missed opportunities in this movie. But at the same time, one thing I did walk away from this movie with is totally believing that Sam Wilson is Captain America. I think for 100%. All of the shortcomings of this movie, Sam Wilson, Anthony Mackie playing Sam Wilson did an amazing job with what he was given. And I can buy that he is Captain America. He's still going to have a hard time at recruiting the Avengers because people were going to keep telling him like Thunderbolt Ross does, "You're not Steve Rogers," again in the Harrison Ford voice. I'm sure a lot like that was what he was told in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier show. He's still sort of doubting himself in some ways, and I'm sure that's going to be continuing to be a part of his character until he does go through and fight with I don't know another alien army in Doomsday or whatever the case might be. It will also be interesting to see because apparently we're getting evil variants of Avengers coming soon. Whether he's going to come up against an evil variant of Captain America that does have the super soldier serum and that like a evil Chris Evans, Steve Rogers, where like how does he fight Steve Rogers like hand to hand? Can he beat him like without the serum? So I'm interested in seeing where this character goes. He's gonna be a big part of Doomsday. I enjoyed the movie overall. I thought it was still like middle of the road, 6 out of 10. Yeah. So John is just
I would
in the chat, by the way.
I feel like that's my number too. 6.5 out of 10 probably. Again, not the worst, but a lot of potential to improve.
Yeah. Well, we have to move on to some other piece of Marvel news because we do have a couple other things to get into. So Daredevil Born Again is coming out soon, and we now know that Tony Dalton is returning as the swordsman in Daredevil Born Again. So I want to get your reactions to it because I'm sure both of you guys are interested in the show at least. I mean, I don't know, John, how interested you are, but I know, Liz, you'll be watching it for sure. So
I will.
Does this move the needle for you at all? Good. Given that the swordsman is coming back?
I will let you know, John.
I already got my boy telling me like, hey, bro, you got me on a bunch of other shit. Got me on Superman and Lois. You got me on, I think it might have been Cobra Kai. It might have been something else. Or no, he got me to watch this movie called Snack Shack. Both of them were excellent. I'm like, bro, you're 2 for 2 right now. So like,
well, fine then.
Just let me know if Daredevil. I trust him because he's like on like he's on his last rope with Marvel. So I'm like, all right, just let me know if it's good. He's like, I'll let you know if it's good. And you know what? We'll see. Like I want it to be good, but I mean, Tony Dalton is an exceptional actor. Like his just role on Better Call Saul alone was just excellent, and I'm sure he was good in Hawkeye. Never watched it, but I already fucking put it in there.
Hawkeye was enjoyable.
Quick question from Figure Drawing actually saying this was if this was a fleshed out series on Disney Plus, Captain America 4, that is, would that have been more befitting in hindsight now that you've seen it? I think Quantumania could have been dope if it was a TV show instead. I think Captain America 4 wouldn't have benefited from being a TV show.
Well, and he already got a TV show and it was mid. Like,
well, exactly. But what I would have benefited from, I think, it was less than 2 hours long. I feel like that's one movie where I'm like, that movie could have used an extra 20 minutes to flesh out the plot details a bit more because of the amount of stuff that the movie was filled with. I think
they should have fucking made a sequel to Falcon and the Winter Soldier instead of Incredible Hulk and Eternals. I think that would have been really good.
But they do have to address the Eternal storyline. They do have to start getting the X-Men characters involved. So in that regard, they did what the right thing because nobody else has addressed the Eternals since Eternals. So I'm glad that happened. But no, to answer that question, and I did answer it in the chat, I'm sick and fucking tired of the series. I'm sick and fucking tired of them. Have movies, because when they break up stories and then try to reconnect everything, guess what? you're not allowing audiences to access everything. Not everybody has Disney Plus. Not everybody's going to go see every fucking film that you put out. So stop breaking up the stories amongst all these various projects. There needs to be more consistency. I'm sick and fucking tired of them deciding, oh, well, this character is going to get a TV show this year, and then next year they're going to get a movie. Stop it. Stop it. I can't even keep up, and I'm a fan, and I like this shit. It's ridiculous. You save your Disney Plus projects for completely different films, completely different series, completely different shows that don't connect back to this, kind of what DC is doing right now. And let these other people have their storylines. Stick to the movies, make the movies consistent, and then stream them on Disney Plus later on after they left the theater. Fine. But I'm so sick and fucking tired of them being wishy-washy and going back and forth about it. Cut it out. If Daredevil gets a movie, I'm going to blow my brains out. I'm going to be pissed off. Be consistent, one way or the other. That's all I got to say.
I mean, Charlie Cox would love to be in a movie. He wants that Marvel money.
Listen, I'm not mad about it. He has made appearances in other films. That's great. My point is, keep it consistent.
A figure drawing is loving your hot take, and the watcher in the chat was saying Daredevil is going to be good, and then also saying in his opinion, Falcon should have been capped temporarily for a Falcon and the Winter Soldier sequel season, and then have Sam go through an arc where it's too much for him. I don't know. Maybe they'll still do that.
We kind of had that in this film. We kind of had that in this film. I told you, figure drawing. I'm the biggest sailor you're ever going to meet. It's going to happen. We kind of had that where he's been questioning it ever since he was given the shield. So we've been there. We've had that thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we got KC in the chat now as well. So hello, KC. I'm excited to see where Daredevil Born Again goes, because a lot of pressure on this show, a lot.
Well, everyone keeps making comments about Bucky getting the shield. Gang, Bucky is like Natasha.
He's brainwashed.
He's got red on his ledger, babe. He's got red on his ledger. He's never going to be able to be Captain America with the history that he has gone through, regardless of how much he's redeemed himself, regardless of what a good guy he is in the end of the day, regardless of the fact that Steve Rogers vouched for him. He's got red on his ledger, babes. It's not going to happen. So stop it.
It's a good point.
We're going to still get him as Bucky, and he's got his shit, so who cares?
That's probably the reason why he wasn't. Yeah. I mean, that's the best pick, and that's clearly why he's in the Thunderbolts movie, and Sam Wilson is not. Those two characters are taking two very different paths, even though they're still best friends, which like that we see in Captain America 4. Now, again, earlier we were talking about how Marvel has stopped development on the Nova series, but before they paused development, they apparently at one point in time wanted Austin Butler to play the Richard Rider character in the Nova series. I will say this, if they had Austin Butler in mind, that must have been for a movie. Either that or it was before Austin Butler blew up to be one of the hottest names in Hollywood, because I do not see him signing on to just play Nova in a Disney Plus series right now. His career's on an upward trajectory. He's shooting to the moon. So
100%.
Regardless of whether this Daniel RPK report was true or not at some point in time, I just don't think as a TV show this would have been possible.
Series.
Exactly.
Yeah. I could see him. I think he would have been a really good Richard Rider.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Just like I see him, I see his name. I'm like, just for some reason that clicks to me. I don't know why.
No, I would love to see him in the role. Does the guy have an accent normally? Because one of these days, I'd love to actually hear Austin's real speaking voice in any role that he's in. The poor man has been to more vocal coaches than anyone. But if they were going to make it a film, absolutely, I'm there. But I completely agree with you, Dan. The man is a shooting star right now. There's no way he's going to do it a TV show. Not at all. Yeah. And certainly not one that's going to be streaming. You know what I mean?
Yes. But I was going to say Brad Winderbaum, the head of Marvel Television now, he has said, and even Kevin Feige has said, that their new approach with TV series is not to make it so that these TV shows are must-watch or that these TV shows are on the same scale as the movies. I think they initially started out wanting to make them complementary, but now I think with Captain America 4, a lot of the reshoots were done so that the movie felt it was more standalone, that you didn't have to watch a ton of things to go see it. And I kind of felt that watching it. And similarly, I think with Nova, they would have tried to do the same, even though it's no longer currently relevant.
And again, if that's the plan, that's fine. I like that DC is trying to do that, is trying to really draw a line in the sand and establish these projects as separate entities. So if Marvel wants to do that, great. If we're never going to see that character, or at least played by the same actor, that they could have another iteration of that character show up in the films, then fine, as long as they don't connect it back. Because again, when you spread yourself out like that and you don't make yourself universely available to all audiences, it takes something away from it.
Whoa.
So
okay.
So yeah.
Keep it in your pants. Goddamn.
And
Jeez.
Oh, like you said it like,
here's the thing.
Like the thing. Okay.
Don't compare me to that thing.
Oh, you said that thing? You mean the thing? Anyway.
Oh
No,
my
that
God.
thing. Michael Chiklis is the real thing. Anyway. But I will say, give it time. Once Lanterns comes out, and if that's a hit, they're gonna bring Nova back, because the Nova Corps is essentially Marvel's Green Lantern Corps. So, I mean, Marvel has done that in the past. Oh, you're doing a Batman versus Superman? Well, we're doing a Civil War movie. Oh, you're doing New Gods? Well, we're doing Eternals. Oh, you're doing the Suicide Squad? Well, we're doing Thunderbolts. So, it's been like, there has been some, back and forth a little bit. So I would not be shocked if this was put on the back burner. They wait, Lanterns comes out next year, and then all of a sudden, now we're ready to do a Nova show. So we'll just have to wait for that.
As of right now, they're zagging to DC zigging. So they're going in different directions, which I'm fine with. But John, we're here to also talk about the big season finale of Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, which just wrapped up its first season. It's already been greenlit for seasons 2 and 3. In fact, they've already been working on season 2 while this was airing. They batched up the episodes. I think that it started off with a 2-episode premiere, then they dropped 3 episodes for 2 weeks in a row, so you got 8 episodes in 3 weeks, and it had total runtime of 10 episodes. So episodes 9 and 10 dropped yesterday. And Liz, I don't know if you finished the show, but I know that
yes,
you
I did.
Yes,
I did.
All right,
sure
perfect. Then you got.
She finished
Liz
like 1 minute before I did.
Yeah.
She literally texted me, I just finished, and then I just finished.
Which is weird because I feel like Liz was way behind you. She caught
That's
up
what
and
I
then
thought.
I was
went
not.
right
Thank
ahead of
you. I was not. I had the 2 episodes remaining, just like
Because
John
the
did.
last
Thank you
time I
very much.
checked, you were like last week. You were like, "Oh yeah, I still got like, I only watched the first 2 episodes." So I was like, "No, that's fine. I'm just saying."
And then I worked overnight, so I stayed up all night watching the show.
Fair enough. So Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man
I come
episode.
prepared to this show, gang.
Just not on DC stuff, on Marvel stuff, because that's
We will be getting to
real
DC.
thing.
I did
in
watch
a bit.
Peacemaker
Yes.
and Creature Commandos. Someone called GI Robot.
Well, we're gonna get into DC stuff in a bit,
Someone
but
called
before we
G.I.
do,
Robot.
somebody
Sorry,
definitely called GI
I had to
Robot.
show the sign. I had to show.
Yes, the sign. If you guys haven't been watching from the beginning of the show, we did allude to it earlier. But Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, now having wrapped up season 1 with episodes 9 and 10 today, I want to get your opinions on this, since both of you guys just finished watching it within the last couple of hours, so it's fresh in your minds.
Yeah, boy.
Do you feel like, as it says in the graphic down below, that this is a great addition to a faltering universe? Because the MCU has had a mixed record of late. We've been talking about it with Captain America 4, for
Especially
example.
in animation.
Especially in animation. So, like, the What If series has been really up and down. So, what are your thoughts on Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, the season finale, episodes 9 and 10?
Marvel lady, why don't you go first?
I loved the finale. I thought they threw a lot in there. There were a lot of surprises, but literally like every 5 minutes, you're like, oh damn, oh crap, holy good. So I'm like, they have left us, they didn't leave us with like a cliffhanger necessarily, but they left us with a lot of things to process for
Yes.
season 2 coming up, and a lot to look forward to, quite frankly. But yeah, between the character development, they threw a lot of characters that we know at us as well throughout the series, but I just really dug it. I thought the final episode was done really, really well. I'm digging the show. I'm digging the characters. I'm digging the alternate direction these characters are taking, because these are characters that we know, that we have a history with, but it's a different universe. It's a different world. They're doing different things. They connect in different ways. So in that regard, I'm really digging it, because every episode is a surprise for me. So I thought this one was great. And John, you, Mr. Marvel naysayer, you enjoyed it as well.
I did. Here's the thing. I was one of the few that was like, okay, let's see. Because I watched the initial trailer. Apparently, I was like the only one excited for this show because I'm like, I like Spider-Man. Like that's kind of the constant for me for Marvel. If
Right.
everything else sucks, like I have Spider-Man. I'll have my revenge. But anyway, but I like Spider-Man, and I watched it, and I'm like, outside of the clunky animation, which it didn't really get much better. I can't blame them too hard because
Yeah, it's
like
hit or miss for me. Yeah.
because here's the thing, it was supposed to be 2D animated. It wasn't supposed. It was supposed to be like specifically like super Steve Ditko style, but then they had to cut corners and make it CGI 3D animated. So that's why it looks so weird. So maybe now that they, realize their budget, they'll maybe do like better stuff in the future, hopefully. But it's like I can't blame them too hard because literally, like during pre-production, their budget got cut. Like I can't fault them too hard. Like they have to work with what they have. And Marvel is like refusing to like give them any budget for animation, even though this company was literally fucking built on animation, amazing animation. Like, I just don't get it. Like that still irks me to this day. But ignoring that, I thought that this is everything I want in a Spider-Man show and more, maybe more. Because I think these last 2 episodes were fantastic. Overall, the show, it's not perfect, but I would say this is the first great thing I've seen from the MCU in a while. And I loved it because like it gets Spider-Man. It feels like these writers know this character, love this character, and wanted to do. I think the best decision was the fact that they weren't tagged or like they weren't like stuck to the specific 199999 canon where it was, Tom Holland and all that shit. They're like let's do our own thing. It's too much. So it's essentially like an elongated what if, and we do see the Watcher in episode 10, which was like, oh god, why are you reminding of this of this crap? But like overall, like I liked how like episode 9 we do get a little bit more of the like Lonnie stuff, and for the most part that's capped off in episode 9, which makes episode 10 I feel much better. It's more Spider-Man like at the forefront, which again, I've said this in the past, I didn't hate the Lonnie stuff. I don't and never hated the Lonnie stuff. It just I just liked this version of Spider-Man and I wanted to see more of him. So that's just but I understand you gotta have B plots, you gotta like build the world a little bit. You gotta build these characters that we're never going to see in the MCU. So like let's build them up a bit, and that's great. So I think we're getting a lot of like really great stuff in the future. We're like that shot of Spider-Man saving Nico in episode 9. I'm like that's Spider-Man. That's fucking Spider-Man. Like him in the classic suit and just like saving his friend despite them being in a fight. That's fucking that is what I fucking wanted in the first 2 goddamn movies of that fucking franchise, but didn't get. And that right there, that was one of the many moments, but that was like the moment that I'm like, this guy is Spider-Man. Like that, like I knew he was Spider, like I know he's Spider-Man. Obviously he's Spider-Man. He's a great Spider-Man. But that was like really just like hit like we were getting batting singles, doubles, and triples, but that was the grand slam moment. That was like everything paid off right there. We got him. We have him. Like we got the shitty like proto suit. We got the future foundation suit. Now we have the fucking classic blue and red. It's just like such a fucking great moment. I think The Scorpion fight got a little repetitive. Like it felt like a bad horror movie where it was like the villain gets up again, like how many times are you gonna put this guy down and then he gets up again? Like, calm down. But I liked Lonnie being like I feel like it was they kind of pulled it out of their ass to make Tombstone Lonnie the head of the 110th. Don is just like a pussy and just like, I'm out of here, bye, and then that's it.
Yeah.
Now Lonnie's the head.
I mean, not necessarily surprising, but yeah.
But like, I understand what they're going for. I just wish there was a little bit more basis for that, because that is mirroring like the idea of like a guy who's clearly not a strong leader. Like he gets out when things get really tough. So I get that. I get what they were doing, but it just felt like, I feel like there should have been a slightly more build up to that resolution of him just yeeting the fuck out of there. Hi, Lenny. Just him yeeting the fuck out of there in Tombstone. Because Tombstone is going to take over the 110th and be more of his, persona. He's going to get the gas and all that shit. And I thought that was done pretty well. I like a lot of great, like I liked the action. I like the Scorpion of him going down multiple times was a little annoying after a while.
Right.
But yes, they do have a bunch of I think they didn't have all 4. They just had 3 of them. But I really
I will say, going back to, no offense to Benedict Cumberbatch, but I love this Doctor Strange. I think I like him better than
oh yeah, so do I. He feels straight out of the
love him.
I love the suit way more. Like I love this is like, again, this is straight up Ditko. Very like, if you don't know if this is Ditko, it's heavily Ditko inspired and it just looks great. Because I feel like what they really got with this Strange, I don't know who voices him. Somebody look that up. But I because like Benedict Cumberbatch, it's just he's a bit too Tony Stark for my liking, like he just kind of feels like Diet Stark at points. And here he feels like more like Doctor Strange. Like he feels like his own character. Like he's clearly like even he when he said a joke, even he eye rolled. He's like, oh, I can't believe I fucking said that. Like I like that because he's like he's his own character. He's not just. And that's what I kind of feel sometimes that the MCU is like everybody has to be like Iron Man, which is, I think, a kind of a fault with the MCU a little bit. Like everyone has to make jokes like him. Everyone has to act like him. It's like that makes it less special for me. But this Doctor Strange, I feel like it feels like it has all of the like Tony Stark isms kind of shut out of it, and he feels more like his own character. And I really like that.
And he's voiced by Robin Atkins.
Great. Oh, yes. Voice acting legend. Of course he's great. So yeah, awesome. And I like the mustache. Like again, I love his look. It's just so retro and it's just so great. And again, this is just like doubling down on what I wanted to see from the Tom Holland Spider-Man, but didn't get until No Way Home. Right. That I wanted to see him, just like complete, like realizing who he is. And I like how Lonnie, of all people, a guy who is inevitably going to be a villain, is the one to like bring him back down to reality when he's about to. I like how they redid the No Way Home moment of him almost killing Green Goblin, with this point almost killing Scorpion in the same way, taking his own gadget and almost killing him with it. Because it's showcasing that this version of Spider-Man has like kind of like this angry energy, like very deep down. And the problem is with Norman Osborn, he's going to unleash that anger because he's a bad guy. Of course, he wants to use Spider-Man for his own personal gain.
Well, and he's got this interesting backstory that we're not familiar with, as revealed in the final episode as well, when May goes to visit his father in prison. So that'll come into play eventually as well.
Oh yeah,
so I'm looking forward to season 2. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, I think I'm super stoked for it, and I like how they're setting all this stuff. They're kind of doing a Parker Industries thing. Yeah. And if anybody who's watching who doesn't know, the Parker Industries arc was like Peter Parker actually like selling his inventions and getting rich from it, but like him being like a CEO of his own company. It's less like that because I don't know if Web is something in the comics, but it's kind of reminds me of Parker Industries a little bit. So they're doing that. Amadeus Cho is still staying at Oscorp, and since Oscorp is doing gamma radiation stuff, they might be setting up Amadeus Cho being the Hulk in the show. That could work, maybe. They have, our boy Charlie Cox coming in as Daredevil. Like, there was like revealing that Jean was a plant by him, and I liked that. Because I was reading up on all these characters. I'm like, because I knew who Amadeus Cho was. I didn't know who the Wakandan chick was, and I didn't know who Jean was. But exactly. Thank you, Lenny. And I think and I'm like, oh, she's a superhero chick. I'm like, okay, cool. And then Dr. Whitman is a villain he's like a Fantastic Four villain, I think. And I liked how they brought that in there. So what? So I like that, and I like what else was set up. They had the Richard Parker thing, as you mentioned. There was like a million things set up. Like, feel free to chime in because there was like so much shit that they set up.
I mean, I think you covered pretty much.
And
everything.
then the Venom symbiote. How can I fucking forget that about the goddamn Venom symbiote? The paradox. Yeah. Yes, that was the other thing. How they made the Spider-Bite a bootstrap paradox. I thought that was really interesting.
Well, and Nico too, finding out there's more going on with Nico as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, I knew that because I knew of the character from Runaways. She's a witch, and she has like witch dark mystic. She's kind of like Raven in a way. But okay, that's interesting. But I never watched the Ultimate version. I didn't read it. I just know of it. I just am aware of it. But yeah, I really liked how they were like, how they were introducing Strange into that episode, and they were like, "What are you talking about? I never went to Midtown. What are you doing? What are you saying? Like, I've never done that." And
yeah, that was when that part happened, I was like, hold on a minute.
And I was like, oh, because here's the thing. I noticed in the beginning it was green, and that's the eye of Ayamoto, I think it was green because of like the time stone was green.
Yep.
So I'm like, that's interesting. And when he said that, I'm like, oh, and it clicked that they're like, oh, they're time traveling. So I like how they essentially, I mean, if anybody here doesn't know what a bootstrap paradox is, it's essentially where something has no origin because of time travel. How essentially Peter gets bit by the spider, the radioactive spider, but it's revealed it's through this portal. But it's then revealed later on that after the spider bite, Norman was experimenting with radioactive spiders, and in episode 10, it's revealed that, or 9 or 10, I forget which one, where he uses Peter's blood. We've been spoiling shit this entire time. I don't think you need to put up the spoiler warning. But they inject the spider with Peter's blood. And so then it's revealed that spider went through the portal. So it's like, where did the blood come from? Because technically they always got Peter's blood and it has no origin. I kind of like that. I think that's kind of cool. I understand people are a little bit upset that it was, it was because of Doctor Strange and all that he got the spider. I was like, clearly there's something more, because they introduced that, like, we're not supposed, he even said in the initial episode, hey, we're not supposed to be here. What's going on? Right. And then, and then I loved how Doctor Strange, he can be cocky and he can be, a little bit of an ass, a little bit on his high horse. Again, not as much as Tony Stark is, like, the Cumberbatch is. But I liked how, you had Doctor Strange, like, having this very human moment of looking at Midtown High and just being like not just in a time travel sort of way, like, oh, time travel's a fickle mistress. So, like, obviously. But him being like, this, it wasn't supposed to happen. Like, people were affected because of me. And that was a great fucking moment that you don't get in MCU movies anymore. You don't get those, like, human moments from superheroes who are like, this actually genuinely affects people, and I'm affecting the populace by doing all of this. Like, I feel like we got a lot of those in the Joss Whedon Avengers
got that
movies.
with Captain America this past film, but okay.
But I think it's just like a really, really great like moment. And and I've just been saying this. I love this version of Peter. Like this from the beginning of when this specific Peter was introduced, he has always felt like Spider-Man. While Tom Holland only started to feel like Spider-Man like midway through No Way Home. So I love Coleman Domingo's Norman Osborn. I love how he threads the line of like almost could be a decent guy, but he's a fucking piece of shit. I like this Harry Osborn. I like Nico Minoru. I like all this stuff. The only thing that's like even the animation isn't terrible. Like sometimes it has like really good moments. The fight scenes I think are really good. I think the Daredevil one is the best, and that's not just me being a Daredevil fan. I just think it was a genuinely like they were using their like reflexes and their heightened senses against each other, and I think that was done very well. So, and at the end, honestly, the only bad thing I can think of from like truly horrible is the fact that Ned Leeds was mentioned on that chalkboard at the end. That's the only thing, the promise of Ned Leeds in the future. But outside of that, everything else, like you saw Max Dillon, like, oh, we might get Electro in the future. I thought Scorpion was a really good formidable villain. Oh, Otto Octavius, we get the arms. We're going to be getting the arms. We're going to be getting. I also love how they kept his sunglasses on in prison. Just like that's a very comic booky thing to have. I love that. And like I just like it's not perfect. I would give it like an 8.5 maybe. It's not like amazing. It's probably not amazing as spectacular. I haven't watched it in like 10 years, so I don't know how amazing that still is. I'm sure it's fucking the greatest, still the greatest thing since sliced bread. But I still really liked this first season. I think it gets Spider-Man, considering we're kind of because of fucking whole bunch of studio politics, we're not getting Spider-Man in animation properly. We still got to wait another fucking 5 years for Beyond the Spider-Verse. So I think this is a nice, like, I wouldn't say like a nice like wait, like oh, this will fill the space for that. I'm just saying this is another great like oh my god, like this isn't like a piece of shit or anything. Oh, we just got to wait for Beyond. No, this is like a genuinely great, like I wouldn't mind watching this. I wouldn't mind watching another season. I wouldn't mind watching 3 seasons of this. And considering that fact that 3 seasons are essentially greenlit, I'm stoked. This is like, I'm not saying I'm going to be brought back to Marvel and I'm going to be watching every project from here on out. And I love Hugh Dancy as Otto, by the way. I think like,
yeah,
I'm still shocked that's voiced by Hugh Dancy.
Yeah.
I was like, oh fuck. Yeah, that's him. I keep forgetting because he's just so good. I always liked Marvel. I just fucking hate what the MCU is doing. I love Marvel, okay? I love Marvel. I love DC. I'm not going to suck its dick constantly. But I love what this is doing. I think this is a great show. I can't wait for the future. I hope Daredevil Born Again is this good. And I told y'all. I fucking told all y'all, and I said it was great. It's gonna be great. And you know what? I was proven right. Fuck you. All the people, oh, this trailer sucks. I'm like, this trailer's pretty good. Let's see. And you know what? It's fucking great. Suck it. Be kind, rewind.
Alrighty then. Anyway.
All right. Well, anything else to add there? I feel like we have done a thorough job of covering the series, the season, not the series, I guess, unless you're British, the first series, but it is the season finale. The first season of Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man has now come to a close. So do let us know in the comments down below what you thought about it. John loved it. Liz liked it. And we are excited for the next 2 seasons. Season 2 has already been worked on. Season 3 is greenlit. The head of Marvel Television, Brad Vanderbaum, as late as a few weeks ago, was going to pitch meetings for season 3 stories. So they're working on this, pretty far ahead. So
yeah,
let us know what you thought about the show.
Barely an inconvenience. Sorry, I had to do it with pitch meetings being mentioned.
Totally. But hit the subscribe button if you're new. If you guys are watching and you haven't hit the like button, please help us out and hit that like button while you're at it, because now it's time for the main event of the show, what you guys are all here for. We are going to move on to talking about DC. So welcome on in to another episode of DCU Daily. As always, we have a lot to talk about. We're going to get into the Clayface story towards the end, but we have to start off by talking about a bunch of other things from the world of DC. To do that with me today, as always, I've got not only John, but also Liz. I usually ask this question to John all the time, but Liz, since you are here today, I wanted to ask you, of the DC stories that you saw on the show rundown, which ones excited you the most?
If I can remember them all. I mean, I'm really excited about the new the alliance that has been made, the world peace that has now settled over the lands, and we can all come together and just unite as fans and loved ones, and just move on to the next chapter.
My sweet summer child. It's cute of you to think that this is going to cause world peace instead of more anger. But let's not get into that just yet. We got to wait for the official page for Dan to pop up real quick.
I mean, John, is that your favorite story of the day?
I'm excited for all the comic stuff that only I'm going to be talking about because Liz has no idea what we're going to be talking about.
Yep, 100%.
Again, I don't mean to sound like a tick. You're just like, I got nothing to add.
It's true.
I got nothing to add.
You're not wrong.
I like how Jalen showed up right at the perfect time. In case he's like, I already know what we're talking about. I just love Caleb. Caleb, you are really, like Liz was saying earlier, you are on fire today.
He's on fire tonight.
And you know what? Pandemonium in the streets. It's chaos everywhere. Cats and dogs sleeping together. Mass hysteria has hit because James Gunn and Zack Snyder came together and took a photo. And James Gunn posted about it saying, always a pleasure catching up with my friend Zack Snyder, consummate filmmaker and a doubly consummate storyteller. Guys, the dark times are over. It's just world peace is here,
and the villagers rejoiced.
We can put our pitchforks down and just go to sleep and not have to worry about somebody coming after us in the dark of the night.
But you know what's wild? The Snyderverse folks are so nuts that now they're gonna come for Zack Snyder himself.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like
the ultimate irony. I'm like,
so they're nuts. Get a life, gang. Get a life. Wild.
Yeah, it's wild. Like it's like they're holding on to the idea of Snyder because it's like they're probably gonna get mad at this, or like they're gonna spin this on James somehow. They're like, he swindled him, he brainwashed him, he hypnotized him with his James.
He promised him a directorial episode and something. Yeah. Gang.
Yeah, it's Caleb. James Gunn. That was Zack Snyder's evil twin that likes James Gunn, or it was photoshopped.
Yeah, I mean, the Watchers like Zach being there isn't a coincidence. Gunn had meetings with James Watkins and Zach the very same day Watkins was announced for Clayface. I mean, I don't know. It's is it a coincidence? Is it not a coincidence? I mean, you look at some of the comments here. 2 ghosts in one image. We love to see it. People liking it. 20 years. We finally have a second picture of you guys together. Speaking of which, I actually pulled up another image here, which is, hey, you recognize this room like the Watcher hinting at it. There's a lot of work going on, you know, in this room in the past, guys. Are you surprised? Well, let me put it to you, John. Is it a coincidence? I mean, Zack Snyder does work on the Warner Brothers lot again. He's been working on the 300 TV series. James Gunn obviously has, you know, his offices on the lot. Do you think it was just a matter of they just ran into each other, or like, you know, Zack Snyder was like, let me go see what they're working on over there at DC, or is there something more to it, considering that, you know, we've seen photos.
It's AI generated.
It's AI generated. I think it was just, you know, Zack Snyder coming in and maybe he was working on something else at WB and he wanted to, you know, come in and be like, hey, take a picture, guys. And that's it. Nothing crazy or anything. I don't think he's back. I think he wants to be fully divorced from DC at this point. I don't think he wants to continue in any way.
He did say if he were to come back, he would want to work on the Dark Knight Returns, like just a direct.
Because apparently that's the only Batman comic that exists to Zack Snyder. No other Batman comics exist. Uh, but I mean, I mean that I said that's the only thing that I don't think anything else is going to bring him back. I know he's friendly with James Gunn, and that's cool. But I think I don't think he's going to direct anything DC. I don't think I think that's just not from like a business point of view, just from a Zack Snyder just wants to move on. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's theory alert in the chat. Jalen Harris saying
that.
Zack Snyder does The Authority and James writes it, the ultimate collaboration. I mean, the last time they collaborated, that was kind of it. Like Zack Snyder directed Army of the Dead and James Gunn wrote that movie. That was really early in the
Dawn
career.
of the Dead, not Army.
Dawn of the Dead. Never mind. Dawn of the Dead. I apologize. And that's kind of around the time when we got that other photo from. So now we have a sequel to that photo. Maybe, maybe the project that James Gunn is
it's part of the mirror
Authority.
Universe because it's mirror. James Gunn's on the left and he's on the right, so it's the mirror universe.
And they have aged and their hairlines have rescinded. I don't know.
Salt
it's like
and pepper, the receded, gray, all that fun stuff.
It's just, I'm so glad that the world peace is here. We don't have to fight over stuff
all
anymore.
We are saying
it's just,
is
kumbaya.
Give peace a chance. Anyway.
But hey, you know what? James Gunn has been busy, as we know, and I feel like we've been missing James Gunn on the show for the last little while, but he's been active recently. Of course, not only posting the photo with Zack Snyder, but as you can see here on the screen, he recently posted that he was bowled over to see this cameo cover of the new Superman Unlimited #1. We've been talking about it recently, the All-In series. They've been, redoing and basically introducing new comic book lines for a lot of different characters. We're going to talk about that as the show goes on. But yeah, I mean, look, James Gunn right there alongside David Cornsweet's Superman. You can get a hold of this cover for yourself on May 21st in a local comic book shop near you. What are your thoughts on this, guys? Are you liking what you're seeing here? And an alternate cover that James Gunn and David Cornsweet will be a part of. Somebody actually grabbed hold of it and even gave us a little look on the inside of the different covers that you could potentially get a hold of.
Very cool.
Thoughts?
Very cool. I like them. Very
You
nice.
got crypto in there.
I like the one on the left in the middle. That looks really like powerful. I like that a lot.
Yeah. I love that too. I love it too. I mean, this looks interesting, but this is not the only one that we're going to be talking about today. Of course, somebody out there made a fan poster which sort of emulates a Superman Returns poster, except now it's got the David Cornsweet suit with obviously the trunks and the logo. I love fan posters because it's an expression of how much we love these franchises. Do you guys feel like this is an improvement upon what we got from the Brendan Routh movie and that original poster?
I mean, it's a modern version of it.
I like it. It's cool. I know it's gonna bring he looks like Jesus. It's annoying. But it looks cool. Yeah. I mean I don't. I think the Superman Returns suit is one of those suits that's like almost good, but I hate how it's like this logo is so small and it's like maroon for some reason. But like outside of that, it's a decent suit. But I like how we see like this version, like you could tell it's an edit. The fucking logo looks kind of weird, but outside of that, it looks good.
It's not the best imitation of a poster, but it's a good one. I mean, Enterprising saying it's a Photoshop Superman Returns poster. If I ever saw one, yes, it is. I just thought like from a symbolism standpoint, I appreciate it. I appreciate the imagery.
Yeah, I like it.
Caleb is like, let's not do the Jesus comparisons. Totally get it. The next piece of news that I wanted to get into is regarding another comic book series that DC just announced. There's a brand new Supergirl series coming our way. It's written and drawn by Sophie Campbell. John, I want to get your thoughts on this. Are you looking forward to it? Do you feel like this is great? I mean, great timing considering there's a new Supergirl movie on the horizon that they want to kind of tie it together. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, could be fun. I don't know Sophie Campbell. I'm not really familiar with her stuff, but Cool. I mean, that's what it seems like they're doing. They usually greenlight a lot of stuff to help boost like some awareness of the movies, even though nobody fucking reads comics anymore. But you know, they're hoping that like,
I mean,
oh,
we of course
maybe
encourage you to go do that. for
maybe
sure.
this time, I don't mind the Supergirl crop top. I think depending it can look good. But they're like, oh hey, look, if you like the Supergirl movie, check out this,
Exactly.
miniseries we've had, and it's you don't have to read any previous shit. You could just read this, and yeah, that's
I mean, figure drawing saying correctly, and no one reads regular books either. Well, actually, that's not entirely true, but there is a significantly smaller percentage of us in general reading books these days. Enterprising starting over back in the 90s. I'm sorry, not Enterprising. Jalen, Enterprising putting in great comments, but Jalen has a question for us. Why do you think there's such a divide between pro and anti trunks with Superman? Because I see videos of people saying that Superman shouldn't have the trunks in this day and age. It's a good question. Caleb's team trunks forever. Hugo Millie, by the way, in the chat. Hello, Hugo, saying Supergirl's skin is her armor. Let her be in the crop top, man. She's fine. Hello, Hugo. So, what do you think about the question from Jalen? By the way, do you think
I think
there's a
people are
reason why the
stupid.
trunks divide?
I think there's a lot of
fan
people
base?
that are dumb. That's all I'll say about that.
Yeah, well, honestly, I think what you're seeing here, the artwork isn't necessarily what we're gonna get in the comic book series.
Right.
It's just artwork that somebody put together for this graphic. But hey, we're getting a new Supergirl series. But that's not the only thing we're getting, potentially, because we've been recently the last couple of days talking about Sergeant Rock. Daniel Craig has dropped out, or I guess he was never officially signed on for Sergeant Rock, but it looks like while they are searching for their new lead, and potentially Jeremy Allen White is being courted for the role of the lead in Sergeant Rock, the Luca Guadagnino movie, Mikey Madison of Honora fame, hot off the awards circuit, she's probably going to win the Oscar. She is now being reported. This is coming to us from updates for DC. Take it with a grain of salt. It's not confirmed. It's not coming from a super reliable source, but they're reporting that Mikey Madison might be in talks to play Mademoiselle Marie, who's a French resistance fighter and essentially plays Sergeant Rock's love interest in the movie. What are your thoughts? Do you think this would be a good fit? Do you believe it?
I don't believe this for a second. I mean, it's like we're still in the like idea of like, is this fucking movie even real? Like, I don't know. I still don't believe it. Maybe that's just me. I don't know. Like, I think that's a jump considering like, oh, this chick's popular. She's nominated for stuff. Let's have her in the fucking MCU or the DCU before the MCU takes her. So it's like, I don't believe that.
Look, I don't know how accurate this report is, but Mikey Madison is clearly a very talented actress. She's going to be coming off potentially a big Oscar win. She's already picked up a bunch of other awards this year. I think it would be a big pickup, a big get for DC if they were to bring her in for Sergeant Rock, and she would definitely, be getting into a franchise where she potentially could play the role for many movies to come. So, from a career standpoint, this might be a good turn for her, but also from DC's perspective, you're potentially getting an Oscar-winning actress on board. So that you can never really go wrong with that. I think we're just adding talent to your team, but let's see just how true this story is as the news on just the whole Sergeant Rock situation progresses, because right now there's a lot of ifs, then, buts, maybes, but we haven't really gotten any official confirmation. So let's see what James Gunn eventually says, and then the movie becomes even official, because right now everybody's been reporting it, but James Gunn hasn't said anything about it. So I'm sure the contracts haven't been signed, the script hasn't been greenlit. Until that happens, casting, I think it's good to have names in mind and people being considered, but let's not hang ourselves over that. So, John, today we're really talking about the DC comics, as well as, of course, DC on the big screen and the small screen. Speaking of DC comics, we were talking about Superman and Supergirl. Batman is also being relaunched this year with a new suit, a new symbol, and a new version of Gotham City to match. Artist Jorge Jimenez is returning to the title. Jorge Jimenez is returning to the title and joining in for this epic new start. And he's a fan favorite writer, bringing in Matt Fraction to write, the new comic book series.
Never heard of him, but I'm sure he's fine.
It's gonna be called Batman #1. What are your thoughts on this so far? I mean, I picked out like a couple of different posts talking about this. It looks interesting to me when you look at, again, just a different look to the character. You're getting more of that blue that you've been wanting to see in live action.
Yeah, I want to see the blue. I don't know about his logo being blue, but I think it could be interesting. Like, is he going to a new city, or is it going to be like Gotham City?
It's Gotham City, but it's a different depiction than maybe what we're used to.
Okay, so is it canon, or is this an Elseworlds?
It is Batman #1. I imagine this is the new current canon, I guess, right? Like, this is...
Okay, I'm curious with what like the new Gotham City would look like. I hope it's not like, oh, we're gonna make it Metropolis, but like not, and it's like, okay, or something stupid like that. But whatever it be, I'm sure it'll be pretty good.
Yeah. So
I like the
basically,
look. I think the look. I don't know. It's just like it just looks so weird. The logo being light blue, but outside of that, it looks great.
Jalen Harris saying, "Gray and the blue. The man from Gotham wore the blue. Gray and the blue." Another retcon. My goodness, enterprising. I mean, we got Jose in the chat, John. What do you think about the logo here, John?
I think it's overall good logo. It's kind of reminiscent of I think it's reminiscent a little bit of the Ben Affleck logo, like not totally, but it kind of reminds me of that, like a thicker Batman one. It's not like the fucking absolute Batman. I'm sorry, I just can't get over that. Like, it just looks like a brick with spikes on it. But I know some people like it, so it's whatever. But yeah, I like this look. I like the blue look. Like, blue will always be better to black. And I think this looks really good. I don't know if I'll read it. And we do get the trunks again. We do get Batman trunks again. I don't know how great. I don't know how great it will be. I don't know if I'm gonna read it, but for the people that do, I think they'll enjoy it. Hopefully they'll enjoy it. But yeah, whatever it is, cool.
Yeah, I'm liking the new logo. The blue will vary. I think if you're gonna ever bring that to screen, then it would depend on what kind of story you decide to tell, right? So that will be interesting. But no, in the meantime, guys, pick up the comic book, read it. I mean, Absolute Batman has been one of the hottest thing in comic books in general for months now. And Jalen Harris saying DC Comics have been in fire lately. Hosea in the chat. Hello, Hosea, saying I like it more than Batfleck's pregnant symbol. Interesting take. Figure drawing mentioning earlier, Jorge Jimenez is a top 5 living comic book artist. Agree with you there. Jalen Harris excited for finally getting a gray and blue suit. A blue symbol is something that Enterprising potentially likes. Jalen Harris saying you love to see it. Enterprising saying it reminded me of some of those animated movies that people forgot about. Yes. And then Caleb, I mean, yes, I think being tired of an all-black Batman suit, this is something different that the fans have clearly been asking for, and looks like we're finally getting some of it. So I'm interested in seeing, just how good it is. I'll go pick it up and give it a read. And we recommend that you do too. In the meantime, Brendan Sklenar has been campaigning and continues to campaign to potentially play Batman. And in most recently, he was doing an interview for one of his upcoming projects. He mentioned that I just think I would crush that role, and I'd love to do it if it ever happens. Remember, previously he said something along the likes of, "I'm built for it, so it would be a dream role." And now he's saying, "I would crush that role, and I would love to do it if it ever happens." What are your thoughts on this? Do you feel like this will actually ever happen? Or do you think this is just like, when Alan Ritchson was publicly campaigning to be the next Batman, that, maybe Brendan Sklenar is shooting his shot here?
I think he's just kind of throwing it out there. I don't think it'll happen. I think he could be good for the role. I like his look, and from what little acting I've seen him from. But I mean, it's, in terms of people campaigning certain actors for certain roles, it's one of the ones that I don't see it. Like, literally the only time I've seen Brandon Sklenar like showcase is when I'm on this show, is the people in the comments. I rarely see it out in the wild. So maybe like a couple people, but it's mostly the top two are like Jensen Ackles and Alan Ritchson. Those are like the biggest ones for Batman. And personally, I don't see it, but I think this guy could be a good choice. It's just like I don't have a ton to say because I haven't seen him in anything except like maybe a bit part in a movie I don't remember. And like the trailer
he's
for
a rising
Drop,
star right
so,
now.
So he hasn't been in a ton.
He was just in It Ends With Us, and now he's coming out in The Drop. So his fame is building, but I don't see him as Batman. I could see him as a role in the film or in a TV show or something like that, but I don't as of right now he still doesn't give out main character energy for me. So I mean, but also like what man doesn't want to be Batman? So like we're going to hear this from at some point Austin Butler's going to say he wants to be Batman. At some point The Rock is going to say he wants to be Batman. I mean, we're all every single one of these actors that has a little bit of muscle tone to them is going to say, "Oh, I can play Batman." Okay. Well, but you're not gonna. So
look, earlier
like,
we were
he's
earlier in
shooting
the
his
show
shot for sure.
Yeah, like we've been talking about James Bond. Like earlier in the show we spent almost an hour talking about James Bond. And when it comes to one of the roles in Hollywood, right alongside James Bond, you would say Batman. Like playing Batman is one of the most sought after roles in the entirety of entertainment, like Hollywood and otherwise. So I'm not surprised that he's shooting a shot. Obviously, I think he has the acting ability. He's got the build for it. Liz, we did verify that he is indeed tall enough. He is 6'2". So I think
that's important.
He checks that box. Not that you have to be 6 feet. I mean, Christian Bale was a great Batman. He's not 6'2". Liz said no big D energy. Yeah, figure drawing. You called her out. Hosea saying I'd still pick Reacher over this guy, but I can have my mind change.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean,
thank you.
Look, I think as far as the nuances of like the acting ability, like can you pull off a great Bruce Wayne? I will say, the idea of Alan Ritchson kind of bringing that Reacher vibe to the Batman and Bruce Wayne character kind of has been growing on me over time, because we sort of saw a little bit of that, like a brute force sort of an approach that Ben Affleck took. But Ben Affleck is the best actor amongst those three names, so
and you
it's
don't
hard
need to pad that suit either.
Fair.
I mean, David Cornsweet didn't need to pad his suit neither, so
yeah, clearly, especially in certain areas. But I mean, look, Brendan Sklenar is shooting a shot. I'm interested to see if this is something that gets past James Gunn, or if he's even considered it. Look, as far as we know so far, they haven't even started getting close to casting for this role because they don't have a completed script for the movie yet. And until that happens, whether it is still Andy Muschietti or not, they're not going to start casting for the role because it doesn't look like Batman is making a live action cameo in either Superman or Supergirl. So and of course we could be surprised, but Brendan Sklenar, he's officially putting his name out there. This is 2 times now in interviews that he's mentioned he would love to do it, and obviously I'm sure he's going to get continued. People are going to keep asking him this question now, continuing to ask him about like, do you want to play Batman? And every time he says something about it, I'm sure we'll talk about it. We just have to see if that leaves an impression on the folks at DC who are making the decisions. So in the meantime, Clayface, we mentioned earlier that that will be the big topic in terms of DC news today. Clayface has finally found its director, James Watkins. Now, John, the last time we talked about this, James Watkins was set to go in and basically pitch his vision for the script that Mike Flanagan has written. And it looks like that meeting went well. Earlier, we were talking about world peace. It looks like the same day that James Watkins went in to, essentially went the same day that Zack Snyder went into James Gunn's office, and they took that photo together that, created everlasting peace in the world of comic books, movies and TV shows and all of the land of comics. That was the same day that James Watkins went in and pitched his version of the movie based on the script that, of course, has already been written by Mike Flanagan. And it looks like he got the job. James Watkins of Speak No Evil fame will direct DC Studios' Clayface. The movie's already got a release date set for September 11, 2026. We don't know if they've cast anybody for the movie yet, at least not officially. And while we know that there's a script there that is completed, greenlit, and James Gunn is behind it, Mike Flanagan has officially been, they've announced all of those details, and we were just missing the director. You usually want to bring the director in before you start casting. So I want to start with asking you, John, what do you think about James Watkins as the man that they've chosen to move forward with? We had heard there were a couple other names in consideration. It looks like they found their guy. Do you agree with the choice? What do you think about a James Watkins directed Clayface?
I'm open to it. I became a little bit more open to it when I heard like the rumored other people. I'm like, oh Jesus Christ! And the thing is, it makes sense because Speak No Evil was like a big surprise hit. A lot of people were like, "Oh, this is actually good." I don't agree, but most people liked it, so that's something. And I did say, I have heard Eden Lake is a good movie. I mean, that would be interesting. I don't think he will though. Um, I Eden Lake is one of those movies where I've seen a lot of bits and pieces from it. I know the ending, and it just like doesn't rub me the right way. Like in terms of like horror, and that's saying something for me personally. Um, but I did really like Woman in Black. I thought that movie was excellent, and he did not write that movie. He only directed it, and I believe that's the only horror movie he only directed, and that's the best thing I've seen from him. So that's my hope, is that we're going to get something Woman in Black, as something as good as Woman in Black. So I'm open to it, and we do have such a strong writer with Mike Flanagan, who's, excellent. So obviously we'll see. I'm not totally like, oh my god, this is going to be the greatest thing ever. When I thought Mike Flanagan was directing it, I was like, oh yeah, this is going to be the greatest thing ever. But the fact that someone like James Watkins is directing it, I'm like, okay, let's see rather than let's fucking go, But I know Mike Flanagan has his fucking plate filled with shit. Like he's got like 6 Stephen King adaptations and like 3 other movies and like 2 other shows, and it's like the man has a full plate. So all right, let's see what he can do. I'm not like, oh my god, let's go, or like, oh god, this is the worst thing ever. But I'm
yeah.
Yeah.
In the comments, everybody's like,
yes,
talking about James McAvoy. Yes, Scoot McNairy was the man in the wheelchair in BVS, by the way. A lot of you guys wanting to see Magical Sky Wizard wants to see Anthony Starr, which yesterday we had James McAvoy and Anthony Starr both as potential choices for Constantine. So ironically enough, but James McAvoy, a lot of you guys like the idea of him taking on the role of Clayface. He of course was the lead in Speak No Evil. So yeah, and then Enterprising saying, yep, let's move on to the next step. Like, what do we do next? We're gonna cast the actor now. Yes, and Hosea missed the part where we declared world peace because James Gunn and Zack Snyder took a photo together and complimented each other. At least James Gunn complimented Zack Snyder. We haven't seen anything from Zack Snyder about it, but yes, so world peace in the world of DC Comics, hopefully. The Watcher suggesting Anthony Starr as Reverse Flash. Caleb suggesting, hear me out, Bill Skarsgård as Scarecrow.
Hey,
it would.
I'll take it over him as the fucking Joker. Like, I'll take it. I think he would do a great job there.
He would do good as a Joker too, but
I'm just so sick of people like, he played a clown, let's have him play another clown.
Right.
It's like,
right.
All right, that's not really inspired.
Fair. That's fair.
Well, Liz, let me ask you this: did you watch?
Would he do a good job? I think so, but it's very different.
Yeah.
It's not just him playing a clown.
I sure did watch Speak No Evil. I surely did.
So, seeing that obviously this is the same director, James Watkins directed Speak No Evil, does that give you any level of insight considering what you know about Creature Commandos and the character of Clayface now that you've familiarized yourself a little bit more with, like, we've been talking about him for months? Is it a good fit?
If we're talking about James McAvoy or if we're talking about the director, I don't know that I've seen anything else that he's done, but Speak No Evil I thought was very good. It was, the pacing was good in that film. If we're talking about James McAvoy, the man can do no wrong. He's also a smoke show. But he, as we know, he can also tackle multiple accents. So for playing a character that switches roles and can turn into other people, he's already done it. So we know
that makes sense for him.
We know he's fully capable and could handle that. But we'll see. I think this is a very, Speak No Evil was a very original film, original script and concept. So
Well, I
is
mean,
something
as
that's
much
been
as a
fleshed out
remake
before.
can be, but
Well,
yes.
but this is something that has been fleshed out for a while now. Like we're familiar with this character, we're familiar with this storyline. So people are obviously going to have feelings about it one way or the other. But we'll see what happens. I think everybody's just excited to finally get a Clayface project in general. So
Mhm.
hopefully there's just going to be good
Better.
stuff from now on.
It just
Yeah.
like I'm just it just for me personally, I see a lot of fan casting. I see so much fan casting from a lot of people,
Right.
and I see the same things over and over again. It's very tiring. Like
Yeah.
Anthony Starr as Reverse Flash, Bill Skarsgård as the Joker, Willem Dafoe as the Joker. Now, I'm sure these guys would be great. It's just seeing them so much. It's just like, just be a little bit more creative.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, fucking Johnny Depp as the Joker. I don't know, like just like something more
Well,
creative than that.
Before we move on, I wanted to kind of mention again, just because Liz, we haven't had this conversation yet. They released a bit of a summary about what they essentially are thinking this movie is going to be based on the script. According to sources, I mean, not only does the movie have a pretty modest budget of $40 million, it's also being considered a Hollywood horror tale that centers on a B-movie actor who injects himself with a substance. And of course, a lot of people have been comparing it to the
Yes, I
movie The
read that.
Substance
Yeah.
to keep himself relevant, like Demi Moore does in the movie. Although, again, the Clayface story is older than the movie's The Substance, but nonetheless, I'm sure comparisons will be had. Only to find out, this person, once he takes a substance, that he can reshape his face and form, which is similar to what we saw in the Batman the Animated Series version of Clayface from late 90s, early 2000s. So now it essentially becomes a walking piece of clay. So it can get a little fantastical, but I mean, for $40 million, I wonder just how much VFX work they're going to be able to do. Also, so far, what we know is that the movie is set to shoot later this year and is meant to show the breadth of DC material. This is something we were talking about earlier this week. It was being highlighted that, DC really wants to showcase, Peter Safran, James Gunn really want to showcase that, hey, DC will do, big budget superhero stuff like Superman and Supergirl, like where they're spending 150, $200 million. And then on the other end of the spectrum, they want to take on these lesser known characters and then bring them into projects where they're more modestly budgeted, but at the same time, still, have a great story. Like this will be more of a horror movie. What do you think about just all these little details we know so far, even though we obviously don't know a ton about the very specific plot?
Yeah.
Knowing what you know, does that bode well for you, considering especially coming out in September?
I mean, it makes sense.
Is it going to make money?
I mean, it's definitely going to make money. Again, fans have been excited about the prospects of a Clayface project, and now it looks like it's definitely happening. So everybody's really pumped about it. There's going to be butts in seats for sure, especially for people like me who are not familiar with the character, aside from what we got that little bit in Creature Commandos. And again, the fact that they're going kind of like more of like a horror route with the character again fits this director very well. So I mean, I'm all for it. It all sounds like good stuff to me. So why not? Let's do this thing.
Yeah, I think it's very I think it's interesting. It just, as I've been saying, like it's as you were saying, it's like taking risks. It's taking we're trying to do different things. It's like we're not trying to have like superhero fatigue,
Yeah.
We're trying to like broaden various things and various ideas when it comes to these projects, because we just don't want like the same stuff over and over again, and then people get tired because it's like superhero movies are going to be around for a while, even if they like die down, we don't get cinematic universes anymore, all that shit. They're still going to be around. They're like still a genre. It's just they won't be as popular as they are now, or at least like 5-10 years ago. But I don't think we're ever going to go back to the place of like the 80s where we got like nothing except for like a couple Superman sequels, and that's kind of it. So yeah, I think this could be interesting, but I'm still more cautious about it.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we'll see. That's all we can do. They're making decisions without us, so see what happens.
Cool. So thanks for watching, I guess. DCU Day. Hello. Thanks for watching DCU Daily. We're not done yet. We're gonna, we're gonna have previews for next week. Next week? I can't talk. Next week for Last Breath. This is a movie I know nothing about. It's a movie. It's coming out next week. That's all
Apparently,
I know.
it's based on a true story. Our boys Woody Harrelson and Simu Liu are in it. There's some other actors and actresses you may recognize. I can't recall any of their names at this time, and I don't feel
Cliff
like pulling it up.
Curtis, Jimon
Uh,
Honsu are some of the other guys in the movie.
Sure. But it takes place on an oil rig, and Woody Harrelson and Simu and the other gentleman are going down to do some maintenance, and the gentleman in orange essentially gets stranded at the bottom of the ocean. There's a really bad storm happening, and Simu tries to rescue him with the aid of Woody. It looks good. I'm looking forward to it. Again, it is based on a true story, so here's hoping there's a happy ending. I'm gonna go ahead and assume that there is, but I'm looking forward to it. It's the kind of movie that I dig, so it looks great. I love seeing Simu. Woody is always phenomenal, so check it out, gang.
Yeah, I mean, apparently I looked it up, it's a remake of a documentary that came out like 6 years
Okay.
ago.
That makes
So, interesting. I don't know if I'll watch
I mean,
this, but
I don't necessarily like the timing because it's so freaking cold here in New England, and then the idea of sitting in a theater for 2 hours watching a movie that takes place at the bottom of the ocean, like just by proxy, I'm gonna be freezing watching it and thinking about, the cold, deep depths of the ocean. But hey, it looks good to me, so I'm looking forward to it. I'll definitely be seeing
yeah,
it.
cool. But another question. Do you think the DC slate should have started with more A-list characters, or is this current slate smart for DC? No, I think this works. I think we have
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, we have two A-listers. We have the most popular characters, Batman and Superman, in this part one of this slate. And then we have
Again, you've been talking about superhero fatigue. I have been begging for new characters that I don't know, that I've never seen, that I've never experienced, that I don't know their backstory. So I think it's all good. I think it's really, really smart on their part to finally showcase some. They have hundreds of characters, just like Marvel has hundreds of characters. So it's about time that we start to showcase some of the other people that have made up these franchises for so long. So I think it's great.
Yeah. But yeah. I'm probably not gonna watch this, but this is the only thing coming out next week, so we're doing
I'll be there.
movie of the week about it. But thanks for watching, guys. We've got to go through all the people. Jalen Harris, Enterprising, Caleb, Hosea, Lenny was here for a little bit. The Watcher, I think I saw figure drawing.
Nick,
I think I
Antonio
saw
stopped by. Thanks, Antonio.
Casey. I think Hunter
Yep.
Iggy might have said one comment or so. But yeah, Antonio.
Figure drawing.
Elite Easy E. Y'all are wonderful. Fiona
Hugo
moderating
Millie.
the chat. Magical Sky Wizard was here in the beginning.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank y'all for watching. Make sure to hit the like button. Hit the hit the comment. Hit the type out some comments. We might do some more fan comments next week, and then hit the subscribe button so you know when we go live.
Yeah, let me get him.
I wasn't gonna say that, so you didn't have to fucking play that stupid clip, but hit the bell so you get the notification of when we go live.
I don't have friends. I got family.
I didn't even say family. What are you talking about?
I'm here for it.
Anyway, do all the things, guys. We'll be here next week. Enjoy the weekend. Spend time with family. Spend time with friends. Relax.
What's real? It's family.
Do all the things that you need to do. Read a book. Talk
see
to
some
a friend.
movies. Go watch
Go
some
see a
TV.
movie. Go watch a TV show. God knows there's 400 billion of them now. But don't even talk about long things with how much you fucking talking about Brave New World. Get the fuck out of here. Anyway, thank you for watching. We love each and every one of you.
We
We'll
sure
see you
do.
next week. It's 1 a.m. Let's fucking get this shit over with. Bye.